Right then. Hello everyone who is watching on YouTube. Um so let me know if all the sound and stuff is working. So today we're gonna go through some online consultation for the NHS, and hopefully it's gonna help trans kids in the UK. We'll explain it in more detail, we'll just hang out a bit, and we'll get through it together. This kind of thing can be stressful and tedious, and I just thought if sometimes when you sit down with friends and just do it together, it's much more manageable. Um, Hopefully today we're going to have a special guest. I've got to just keep my eye on the Zoom invite I've sent out, and hopefully she'll join in a little bit. But until then, I thought I'd just update everyone. You might have seen that I originally scheduled this for Tuesday, which was yesterday. And I wrote a message on Twitter and YouTube saying I had to postpone it due to illness and I'd been in the hospital. Over the weekend, last weekend, I had like proper intense abdominal pain. It was pretty horrible. It's kind of scary. I went to A&E and spent like the entire day there. So A&E, I think, is just an English term or a British term. So that maybe you just call it the emergency room or something, or ER or something, I don't know. But basically where you get free healthcare on the day for emergencies and stuff. And they did a bunch of tests on me and took a load of blood and urine and all the various other things, and found out that I had gallstones, which is some part of your body. There's some bit like in between your liver and your stomach, and your liver creates bile and then it stores it in the gallbladder. And then when you eat like a big meal, your gallbladder contracts and squeezes all the bile out into your stomach, which helps digest the meal you've just eaten. But for various reasons, you can end up, rather than just having a nice gooey liquid in there, you can generate these like little stones in there. I think they're made of what's the word? Cholesterol. And if they get too big, then when they try and go down the pipe, they get stuck. And that basically what happened to me. And as they try and go down, it's incredibly painful. And then your body reacts to it, and then everything swells up. So as well as being in pretty intense pain, everything just like swelled up, and I just felt like I was super bloated. Yes, that wasn't fun. Luckily, it resolved itself, and I didn't need surgery, and I didn't need any drugs. Though, who knows if it happens again. So I've got to just investigate what might have caused it to happen, because usually it doesn't happen to 30-year-olds, though it is more common in women, and who knows if transition affects it. But yeah, so that's possibly a thing. You might be able to tell. I don't know how obvious it is with all the green screen stuff. My eyes are very yellow. I think you can see it on camera. You can see it on my screen at least. So at one point, the doctor comes back and was like, "Oh, we've got your liver tests, and you have a deranged liver." And I was like, "Oh, here we go." But apparently, it's just related. I do actually have some other syndrome, which is really rare and doesn't have side effects, called Gilbert syndrome, which is interesting. Oh, someone's saying I'm a bit quiet. I might be able to. Hang on. Let me just. This is a chill out stream. I don't need to panic. I can turn my audio up a little bit. How is that? Let me know. But yeah, I had this deranged liver, and it's related to, I think, just the gallstones. But yeah, I also have this condition called Gilbert syndrome, where your body makes something called bilirubins, and if your bilirubins are too high, then it's a sign of liver failure. And my bilirubins are always like 10,000 times too high. So every time I have a blood test, I get a call from like some panic doctor being like, "Oh my God, like you need to come in right now, liver failure." And I'm like, no, it's just a syndrome. So if my liver ever does fail, I don't know what that's going to look like, which is kind of scary, but, you know, just we'll see, I guess. But yeah, so now I've got yellow eyes. I still feel kind of grim. I've been really tired. I slept for like 15 hours when I got back from the A&E. and I've still got kind of discomfort in my like body from like my rib cage down because I think it's still swollen, but it's not infected, so could have been a lot worse, could have been a lot better. Something that several people have said to me, including several doctors, is that gallstone pain is up there with giving birth as one of the most painful things. I don't know how true that is. Maybe if you've done both, you can feed back and say which one was more painful for you. There was a moment where it got to the point where I felt like I wanted to scream, but can't because there's people living with me at the moment, and it was like 2 a.m. But it was bad times. But I actually think it's like the third most painful thing I've experienced. Anyway, we don't need to go into that. Today we're discussing this NHS. Let me just message my friend. So we're going to discuss this NHS thing. So if I share my screen, I feel like I'm in a meeting at work. So hopefully now you can see, this is my Twitter. So in the description of this YouTube video, we've got a couple of links, and I might add some more links as we go. And basically here you can find an article from hopefully our special guest, Dr. Ruth Pearce, who's written a very good article, which I've got open here. We've got a resource from Stonewall, Gendered Intelligence and Mermaids, which is how to fill it in. And we've also got a letter from AWFUL, an Australian professional health organisation, etc., etc., which we can look at as a resource. So if you're, oh, I think Ruth's going to join. So if you're like following on, then you can click some of the links. If you're watching this now and you're like, oh, I'll just do this later, that's fine. Do this when you want. However, there is a deadline on this, and I think this is kind of important, and it's a shame that I've had to leave this until this late. But that's just the reality of it. The deadline is the 4th of December, which I think is Saturday or Sunday. So if you're watching this now and you don't have time for it right now, or you are not at your computer or whatever, that's cool. But please do try and come back to it. Maybe come back to this video or just go for it on your own before the 4th, because otherwise we've missed the window. And I'll probably make this video disappear after the 4th, so feel free to say stupid things in chat and maybe people won't see them. So let's see if we can let Ruth join. Hopefully, I hope I've got the right audio here actually. Give me a second to yeah, I think this should be okay. Ruth, I don't know if you can see or hear me, but I can't see or hear you. So we can start off by having a look at this article anyway. Got too many things open here. I hope everyone can see what's going on the screen. Maybe I can make this a little bit bigger. Okay, that's a bit better, isn't it? It says Ruth's joined. Oh, it says joining. I don't know what that means. Oh. Excellent. So Ruth's audio is just loading up. Let's see if we... Oh! Hello, I can hear Ruth. Right, I'll just bring you on screen. I've done my little introduction. So... I am now with Ruth, who I don't think can hear me. But for anyone who doesn't know, Ruth is lots of things, but is someone who can't hear me right now, but has been on this channel a couple of times before, including, I don't know if you remember, we did the really big Trans Day Visibility stream and had some good discussions then. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, do you know what I did?
Yeah.
I have my laptop muted. Absolutely classic move.
Good
Hi,
start.
nice to join you.
Yeah, thanks for coming to join. And yeah, I was just giving you a bit of an intro. Maybe you can intro yourself, but I was just going to say how you're technically a doctor, but you're not a doctor for this stream because you're striking, or
Yeah, no, I'm on strike, so I'm not Ruth Pearce PhD. I'm Ruth Pearce TRA.
yeah.
I hope that'll do. I'm an activist for tonight.
Well, I mean
I-
that is the point in this. I mean, I wanted to go through your article, but I mean, if you would rather not show your article on the stream,
that's a personal blog post, so go for it. Plus, you're talking about it, not me, so it's
yeah.
absolutely fun.
So, I mean, none of this is, and any money for anything. People can donate super chats. Any money I make off this video, I'm just going to donate to probably the 3 charities. One of them, maybe Gendered Intelligence, I'll have to think, but I'll donate it all to someone. And yeah, the goal of this is just to hopefully make some difference towards making healthcare for trans kids in the UK not fucking garbage. So it's not a work thing. No one's really gaining anything from this other than hopefully trans kids. So I think you can see what everyone else can see. But it might be a bit small when I switch over for you. I don't know. Maybe you can make it full screen. But let me just check first before I do that. I hope everyone can hear Ruth in the chat.
Checking.
Yeah, everyone's saying I can hear Ruth.
Excellent.
And people are also saying hello to your cat.
Yeah, that's Greg. He's lovely. So I'm actually moved house really recently to Glasgow. So this is like loads of boxes, and he's gonna tear the flags down in an exciting way, probably at some point. He's having fun.
Well, good on him. This is a chill stream. If cats want to destroy the set, that's allowed on this show. So, but yeah, let's switch over to this screen where we can see your article. So I don't know if we really want to read through the whole article, or if you wanted to summarize. I mean, so what this is the NHS is proposing changing healthcare for trans kids in the UK, and their proposals are garbage.
Yeah, I should specify this is specifically for England and by extension Wales.
Yeah.
I've heard that there's a lot of gender clinicians who work with kids in Wales who are not happy about this. So who knows what interesting things might come of that. And Northern Ireland has its own garbage service, which has been in trouble for some time and isn't really seeing anyone. Scotland has its own service, which is completely different.
And it's good.
I was recently at a meeting with them where they were at pains to be like, "We're not England. We have a different system."
I mean that's partially just Scottish people in general, but it's also particularly anything Scottish to do with LGBT people, because they're just way better than we are.
Yeah, it's bad. Did you see the statement that just all the big feminist charities just literally put out?
Oh no, I haven't seen that.
I mean, they said what they said in 2017. That was like, GRA reform will have approximately no impact on women's services whatsoever. But they went a little bit further and just said things like, women are not expected to bring their birth certificate into a rape crisis centre.
So they're finally saying it, because we just saw the response from, is it Shona Robinson, the Equalities Minister for Scotland, basically just wrote all the things that I've been saying for the last 6 years or whatever, saying, well, there's a load of opposition and it's all about spaces, which has nothing to do with GRA. It's not going to affect cis people at all. They don't seem to have any real issues. Anyway, so Scotland is generally better. But I think anyone in the UK can reply to this. Is that correct? I do believe.
Yeah, I think anyone in the world.
Okay.
I realise it's a bit early for Americans, but if there's any Katie Montgomery American types watching this, I mean, the problem with it is it's open to anyone, right? Which means transgender trend or whatever have it up on their website being, please respond.
Yeah.
So it's well, if anyone can respond, let's flipping respond.
Yeah, so I guess the precursor to anything like this is, I mean, often they just write what, they do a consultation because they have to, and they're just going to do what they're going to do. But I think that showing up and making a big fuss is still good. It's still worthwhile. It's still important, because it's quite a small amount of effort for us. And when they get their consultation, and that they'll get all their fair play for women and transgender trend ones, which will all be the same and will all say the same garbage conspiracy nonsense. But when they publish the report, they'll have to say, oh, there were thousands or whatever of responses which pointed out that nothing we say is based on evidence. So, they're going to have to at least acknowledge that. And then when the next government comes along, then they'll be able to say, oh, well, this previous consultation was mismanaged. Let's have another one, or let's do it properly.
Yeah, it'll be sitting around on the records, like if we can get hold of it. I mean, obviously there's a chance people might try and hide the results, but usually someone can get hold of one of these things.
Yeah.
And yeah, just it's helpful. I think the other thing to bear in mind is there will be people on NHS England who are on our side,
Yes.
and this is ammunition for them.
Absolutely.
And the thing like the anti-trans people won't have, which all of us will, is all of us will have had some kind of trans childhood, whether or not we were out. All of us who are trans anyway, and being able to write from that perspective, I think is quite important. Like, there's so much bollocks in here about stuff like social transition, and it's like, we've all lived a social transition. We know what they're saying isn't true because we've lived it, right?
Yeah.
So,
and you'll see that in the type of responses the anti-trans people give, where theirs will all be very scripted, and what that one famous person who they all follow who's made this one comment has said, and they'll all repeat the same things, whereas our responses will all be very varied. Probably I haven't actually looked at this consultation yet. I'm just going to kind of go through it as we go and talk about each bit. But so basically I think it's beneficial, and we'll find out in a sec when it asks where you're from or whatever. I think try and fill it in if you're an international person. If it's open to everyone, do. And if it's not, then I think, well, my position is don't lie. The anti-trans side are going to lie. They're going to make fake accounts to do it more than once. But there's, that kind of stuff does show up, as often they have ways of, looking to see if the system's being gamed. So I think it's best to just be honest in this and just do what we can do.
totally.
But yeah, so if you want some background, Ruth's written this good article here and has written a reply to the NHS. Maybe we could just cover your 3 main points.
Oh no, there's a Rogue One. I didn't even notice that.
Oh no.
I feel like I'm a Star Wars prequel. Yeah, no, the background to this is I sat for a little while on this thing called the NHS England Gender Programme Board, and it's basically a group with very little power who can feed in advice or whatever to NHS commissioners and other people who have the power to do stuff. And so there's a handful of gender clinicians on there. There's at least one well-known surgeon, for example. There's some commissioners, there's some high-profile NHS bods, there's some advisory people, and then there's 4 people who are patient public voice representatives. So I was on there not people. Because yeah, exactly. Well, 3 trans people and 1 parent of a trans kid.
Okay.
And yeah, so one of the interesting things about it, which makes me feel fine for being here when I'm not on strike, is I wasn't there for being an expert. I was there. It was really stupid because most of the trans people and the parent on that group are actually experts in one way or another, but we're there as patient public voice. So anyway, I did that for a while, and then this year there was a clash in my teaching, so I was like, I'm just not going to do this anymore because I don't have time with work, because it was on a Tuesday afternoon or whatever. So I stepped down, and then just after I stepped down, this happened. I was like, shit. So I wrote them this letter, which I expected they'd ignore, but I hope it's there niggling at the worm of their conscience,
Yeah. So the point, so I'll read out these 3 points just so we know what's coming up, and then perhaps we can have a look at some of the guidance and maybe even start going through it. I don't know how long you want to stay for this, but you're welcome to stay for
I can hang around for a bit. It's cool.
So your second first point is
fuck off.
Let's just scroll that just off the top. There you go. The first point: social transition should not be subject to medical oversight. And this is one of those things that seems fucking obvious to a trans person or anyone who's spent any time around trans people, but maybe it's not obvious to everyone watching. But yeah, we'll go into it. This would represent a gross abuse of power on the part of commissioners and practitioners. Choosing to wear different clothes and possibly use a different name and or pronouns is a personal, non-medical decision related to a person exploring their identity and or coming out. Preventing a young person from choosing social transition amounts to attempted conversion practice. Yeah, so social transition, at least, for kids, for everyone really, it's things like this, changing your clothes, changing your name, changing your pronouns, changing your haircut, experimenting with makeup if that's what you want to do, getting different shoes, like just stuff you can do, stuff that is, and I know it's probably falling into their bullshit to be saying this is reversible, because I don't like that as like a whole framing, but like anyone can just get a haircut, and then if it's bad you can just get a different haircut, like that's this. And really anyone should be able to do that, like a cis person or a trans person should be able to be like, adult or child should be like, I really don't like my name, can I have a different name? Or I don't like my haircut, I want a different haircut. Or I don't like my clothes, I want different clothes. And like you say, trying to control that is, well, I don't just think it's like, I mean, maybe I can be stronger worded than you. I don't know how sort of trapped you feel.
Strongly worded away, like this is my fancy formal shit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, quite aside from like we could talk about how bigoted or whatever it is, but it's weird.
It
like,
is weird.
Why would you do this? Like, what's wrong with someone having a bad haircut? What's like, particularly in this country as well, you could change your name. What's wrong with making a stupid decision about changing your name?
Yeah.
Like, there's literally a guy called Howling Lord Hope in this country. He's not a lord, that's his name. Like, he changed his name legally to Howling Lord Hope.
I didn't know you could put Lord in your name. That's interesting.
Well, the way he did it was he spelled it Laud.
Oh, okay. What a lad. But yeah, it's weird, but I know where this has come from, because there's this kind of it's like the Kenneth Zucker Blanchard kind of school of things, which transgender trend really heavily push, and some other anti-trans groups and the general gender critical movement, which is this idea that if you indulge a trans person by letting them express themselves, then they'll be more likely to push for more and more likely to push for medical transition. So their reasoning is, if you see any signs of a trans kid at all, like any kind of, oh, mum, I want long hair or something, then you need to clamp down on that hard and prevent them from being able to do that. And if the NHS is going to be there saying, well, really, you should let kids do anything, then they don't have the kind of institutional backing that they want to have to start abusing their children, basically, by mandating what they like appear like. Whereas, so that's why they want this kind of thing in. So if they were to write, oh yeah, we think that no child should be able to change their expression without our consent, that'd be completely ridiculous. But that isn't the goal of it. Although this is some kind of reinforced patriarchy bullshit, this is about stamping out transness, which, doesn't work. And like you say, it amounts to an attempted conversion practice. But I mean, that's literally what it is. And if you read any of the stuff like Kenneth Zucker was writing when he was in charge of Canada's like gender identity clinic, he was saying things like this, like, if a kid plays with dolls and it's meant to be a boy, then you need to take those dolls away from them. So
I think actually it's one of these things where like this is primarily about transphobia, but it is bigger than trans kids.
Yeah.
And I always want to emphasize that, because like Zucker's part of a lineage of people who originally went after queer kids. And one of the people, I mean, I don't think he always had the best professional relationship with him, but one of the people he worked with was a guy called Richard Green, who also worked at the Charing Cross Clinic in London at one point. And he wrote this book called The Sissy Boy Syndrome. And it was about how do we prevent boys from being sissies? And it kind of like, it was behind some of the logic of like some of these kind of like reparative therapy treatments, right? Yep. And interestingly, like that's partly what JIDS has been historically. It's not just trans kids or kids who might identify as trans and now or in the future who get referred there. Like historically, there's been lots of gender non-conforming kids. So when they talk about, oh, only this many kids get referred for like puberty blockers or whatever, some of that is them gatekeeping, but some of that is like particularly like the non-adolescents. The adolescents are generally trans, but the non-adolescents who get referred to GIDS, it would be like, oh, this boy wants to wear dress. This girl wants to cut her hair short and wear
Yeah.
trousers or whatever. So like it was the young gender non-conforming kids and the young queer kids who have got referred to GIDS as well as the young trans kids.
And that's
yeah,
absolutely what we saw with Zucker's thing. I only know a lot about Zucker
Yeah.
in particular because me and Krista Peterson did a deep dive on him for our XX Factor podcast thing, which is
Yeah,
still
that
up
was
on my
great
channel
stuff.
if anyone hasn't seen that yet. But like they basically took in all queer kids and then treated them all as if they had gender identity disorder. Even if it was just like a boy who was slightly feminine, like not even because some of them were like sort of the stereotype camp gay boy kind of thing that gender critical people always talk about when they say some trans kids grow up to be gay. That's what they mean. But also some of these were just straight cis kids who like had a lisp or whatever that they decided was too feminine, and they brought them to people like Zucker to stamp that out. Like the whole point was cure my child of this, and that was like the initial start of this garbage. And then they get these studies saying, oh, 80% of trans kids grow out of it. But when they say trans kids, they mean including the 20% of trans kids that were actually trans kids that we saw, and then all of these other queer kids who are all cis kids who would never have grown up to be a trans person ever, but their parents thought they're too gay for my liking. I need them to not be like that. So, it's all garbage and had absolutely disastrous results. Anyway, moving on. Number 2, punishing young people and their families by subjecting them to investigation if they access private services will not help them access healthcare. Young trans people who access private healthcare in the UK or abroad generally do so due to the severity of NHS failures. Yes. It will increase the likelihood of young people hiding the fact that they're accessing external treatment from NHS clinicians and of people turning to black market hormone providers rather than private doctors. I'm not sure that members of the Gender Programme Board are fully aware of how prevalent and dangerous homemade substances already in circulation can be. Yeah, this is like my main argument against, having strict gatekeeping. And I know that we can have some argument about whether we need some gatekeeping at all or no gatekeeping, and that's a big discussion. But there's this kind of idea of, from the gender critical side and from more like true trans people, that the more gatekeeping the better. Surely the more hoops someone has to jump through just shows that they're more trans. But that's just completely ignoring the reality of lots of people won't be able to jump through the hoops for a number of reasons, not because they're not trans, but because they don't perform well under pressure, they're not good at meeting tests, they don't get on with this bullshit system and all of these other things. And then, of course, their only other option is black market. So that's exactly where they'll go. And the more people that go to the black market, the more well-funded and structured that gets. And then you end up with price undercutting and scammers and all of this kind of stuff. And it puts people in danger. Like the goal isn't just to only select the cream of the crop. Like the goal is to help as many people as possible. And I also think it's a bit like banning abortions doesn't stop abortions, it just pushes them underground and more people die. It's a similar thing here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting actually, because I wrote this for NHS people and they're like, oh, black market hormones. And actually, I think like the same as like a lot of people doing like back alley abortion in like anti-abortion places, I think are heroes.
Yeah.
But it's a context where abuse can be absolutely rife. So, I've given friends estrogen. We've all given friends a little bit of estrogen now and again. But I think
whether they were asking for it or not, speaking of
exactly. Well, if we put it in the drinking water, like we could sort all of this out.
Turn in frosty.
Yeah, definitely. But like, I think like we would be better off if we could get this with medical support. And if people didn't have to do the work of figuring out their own hormone regime, if someone would actually help them, that would be great. Like, that's free healthcare. So yeah, and like what this is about, there's literally a little bit in the proposals where they're like, oh, maybe there needs to be a safeguarding investigation if there's young people accessing treatment from something outside of the one monopoly system.
Which is broken and shit.
Yeah, it's completely messed up, to be honest. So yeah, someone asked earlier about Gillick competence. They're like, does this fit with Gillick competence? And the answer is like partly no. I would say like the reason this is happening is like the big push to undermine autonomy for all young people.
Yeah.
But also like this, in a sense, their proposals would work with Gillick competence, because if the service provision, if there's no NHS provision for like hormones or blockers easily, and it's all of the kind of like this nonsense, then whether or not they choose to access a medical service is irrelevant. And Gillick competence is about like competence to make sort of like medical decisions at particular ages. So social transition is kind of irrelevant in a weird way too, because it's not, there's nothing medical about it.
Nothing medical, yeah.
That's what's weird about it. It's like, it's literally pathologizing someone changing their name. Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and it's super controlling, and obviously with the goal of just preventing trans people from existing. I don't think there could be any other possible motivation for the name thing or the, changing haircuts and stuff.
Totally.
Anyway, point 3, requiring that young people become research subjects as a condition of accessing treatment is completely unethical. This is a well-established principle in the trans health literature.
Sorry, someone unexpected door buzz. Carry on.
That's right. There is no way in which you can truly obtain informed consent for research participation from individuals who will be denied healthcare if they refuse to participate. I fully support the expansion of NHS-funded research into trans healthcare, but participants must not be recruited through coercion. Yeah, totally agree. This makes me think of how, like, lots of Blanchard's studies are things where he's, like, split people into 2 really strict, like, categories. And they're all things like, did you play with Barbies? Are you? All these kinds of things. And in order for the people filling in this questionnaire to get medical healthcare, they had to answer a certain way. So it like cut out his results from these 2 possible things, because it's the only way it'd help anyone. So as soon as you're in this situation where it's like, oh, well, in order to get the medical healthcare you need to fill in this questionnaire in a way that I like, then you'll do it. And it's the same with this research stuff. If you're having to participate in research and that the answers you give are going to be like judged and stuff, then you're just going to lie to them. And the more pressure and stuff you put on this, the worse results you're going to get from the research. I'm sure there's loads of other problems with it too. That was just like the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, it's just, it results in bad research, but it's also like, I could comment on more of that on a researcher, but maybe not today. But like, it's just a shit thing to do to people. Right, just the idea that like you don't get to informed consent to participate in research, and it's coercion. Like, if the only way you can get access to treatment is through taking part in research, that's coercion. That's not. Yeah. Because like when we think about informed consent, it's not just healthcare; it's also informed consent to participate in research and stuff.
And then also, it's just like another one of these things that they just haven't imposed on cis people. Like, imagine if they were like, oh, in order to get a knee transplant, you have to be part of our research group. It's like, well, yeah, but why? I mean, surely you could say, oh, please, we need research subjects. And like, I'd love to help. If they could include me in studies for trans healthcare, I'd be prepared to do it because I'm already very public. But there's so many considerations like, do you really trust them with your data? I don't. Even though I'd just go ahead, it's just because they'd have public information anyway. But yeah, it is just garbage. And at least on this one, you can see some kind of motivation of wanting to... I can good faith invent a reason for this, which is you might want more healthcare research into trans people, and I certainly do. But yeah, this just kind of feels like when it's all this forced stuff and paired up with the other things, then it's just like seems like controlling garbage.
This is Hilary Cass's fault. I don't think she intended this, but like she's written a whole load of stuff about research programs, and we need as many people on the research programs as possible to make it, to make it more, valid's not the word. I was teaching quantitative methods earlier this week. It's completely gone out of my head. I know this stuff inside and out. But anyway, it makes the statistics better.
Yeah.
If you've got a larger bit of the population. But like, that's all very well and good if people are given the option to take part. Like, I mean, the weird thing is a lot of trans people will participate in research.
Yeah.
If you have us involved, and like I found, like, because whenever I've been involved in stuff as a researcher and people know I'm involved, people are really keen to get involved because they're like, oh hey, this is by us and for us. Where if it's like cis people treating us like fucking insects, which is what some of this is, like, it's a bit meaner, to be honest.
I know, yeah, I have this all the time, and it's not just researchers, but like journalists and like anyone. Like I get all these requests, like, oh, can you fill in my research? Can you do this? And no offense, cis people watching, but when it's a trans person saying it, I'm just like, yes, let's go. I'm gonna get as many people I know to like go along with this, like, promote it to one people. When it's a cis person, I feel like, well, now I've got to check to see whether you're lying to me, whether you're part of some hate organization, whether you really got the best interest in heart, whether this is just some money-making thing for you. And like, yeah, it's
very boring.
It is boring.
I'm very bored.
So let's move on. I think we can make this bigger. I don't know what the best thing to do here. Maybe we should go through the guidance. And do they have like a section 1, fill this in, section 2? They do.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, so maybe what we'll do, we'll read this little introduction because it looks like an introduction, then a section 1, and then I'm going to open up. And we can look at this too.
This was amazing. Like, it's there for like, I think this is worth pointing out for anyone who's filling in their own response and wants to go for like all the hardcore references.
Yeah.
Pardon me, because they got quite a few hardcore references here. Although a lot of them is them referencing themselves, which is quite funny. But they have just written the Standards of Care 8, which I know was like 50 or 60 clinicians arguing with each other for about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So, and also reading everything, or at least, so broadly speaking, I would say where they are citing themselves, every time you see Coleman et al. 2022, that's WPATH citing the latest standards of care. Right. But to be fair, the latest standards of care summarizes a lot of the existing research.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to do, to be perfectly honest.
It's not the same as when I cite myself, which I don't actually do, but I often link to myself, and it's not the same as when some hate group cites another hate group. This is like international world-leading organizations citing references and research that either they've done or that they've summarized. So
yeah, and the fact that they've managed to agree on it when WPATH consists of some people who absolutely hate us and a bunch of trans people. So, I mean, the fact that they've agreed on anything at all is a minor miracle, quite frankly.
Yeah, so we can celebrate that if nothing else. So, as I was saying at the start, these links are all in the description. If you're on your computer now, or you might be able to fill it in on your phone. I don't know how much screen real estate you have. If you open up some of these links, that'll be cool. So I think what I'm going to do is, this is probably a bit too brutal to like read out. I mean, I think maybe it's best to just read in your own time.
I think it's keep it on standby.
Yeah.
What is quite good is if you look up conversion therapy, you can see, because I wrote my bit. Yeah, there we go. I wrote my bit in the letter, and I was like, there's the bit where there's certain things where you start thinking, am I losing my mind? Like, is it me? Am I being... It's the thing, like, I experience this more as a woman than a trans person, but like, just that thing where it's like, am I making this up? Because there's just so much shit around all the time. And it's like, it must be me. I must be hysterical. And I start thinking that about this shit sometimes. I was like, maybe I'm exaggerating when I'm thinking about, like, it's basically conversion practices. And I think this only because I'm surrounded by, like, NHS nonsense all the time. Yeah. And it's nice to get a step outside my own head and see that, like, these 5 or 6 major organizations are like, no, what you're saying is like tantamount to conversion or reparative therapy under another name. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not just me. And so I think stuff like this is helpful for us to all come together and go like, we are not losing our minds.
That feeling of like self-doubt and sort of, it's almost like a form of what's it called? Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Can be. that is something that is unique to this side of the debate. Because I can assure you, not one single gender critical person has ever thought that in their lives.
Even the sculptor.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who even are all these fucking people who think they know more about our lives than we do? Like, the most ridiculous people on earth. Just some of them just say things with like the utmost confidence, and you're just like, you wouldn't even need to do a full Google search to find this wrong, because you type in the first 3 words and then Google would autofill it into your address bar with the search question, like in a way that you would prove what you were saying wrong. Like, it's just so stupid. Like, come on. But yeah, it's good to know. And I also think it's probably worth pointing out that this kind of the denial of gender affirming treatment under the guise of exploratory therapy has caused enormous harm to the transgender community and is tantamount to conversion therapy. That's something that our Trans Safety Network have been hammering on about for years now. They're like, do not, because explorative therapy sounds good to the general public. Like, oh, we're just exploring to see what's going on. But this is like a word game where they're trying to, like, affirmative therapy, which is the type of therapy that is recommended by other therapists, explores. Like, the whole point is to explore and find yourself. But explorative therapy, the whole goal is to try and find the real reason why you're LGBT. And it's one of these word games things. I mean, that's the whole point in conversion therapy and reparative therapy. They weren't originally bad terms. They were terms, they were trying to make it sound nice. Like, if they called it like abuse the LGBT out of you therapy, then people would not like it. So instead they come up with reparative therapy. We're just trying to repair the underlying issues you have that are making you gay.
Which is the fact.
That's getting clipped out of context.
No, I realise there's a danger of saying things on YouTube. It's whatever. You
better not get me banned.
I'm gonna get you in trouble now.
I'll no. You can mute in post, so I'll do that. Don't worry.
That's great.
That's for the
I am probably going to make things difficult for you because I'm very good at safety in being an academic. I am not so good at safety in saying stupid shit on the internet.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's just look at this little introduction, and then we'll open up the thing and we'll get going. So then everyone can actually get on. So. Someone was asking if I could zoom in. I guess that was zoom in on this thing. Let me just zoom in on this briefly so everyone can have a look. So there you go. That is now bigger, and you can probably see.
There's also like, I think Katie, you kind of mentioned my blog post. Yeah. If people, there's a link to this from that, so people can kind of follow up in their own time or whatever.
This is in my.
Oh yeah. You got it at the bottom of the
yeah
thing.
But we can all this is findable in multiple ways. So yeah, anyway, here's the paragraph, but it's best to just click the links in the description, have a look. But so let's go through the introduction of this. So this is from Gender Intelligence's website, but I believe this is like in cooperation with Mermaids and Stonewall.
And the Trans Learning Partnership, who I used to work for. Got a cool logo, huh?
I think
we paid a trans person to make a nice trans logo.
Yay! Let me just make it so everyone can see that. There's the cool logo. So let's go to the top and look at this. Hopefully this is a good speed for everyone. We're just being chill going through. I thought that it'd be better than trying to rush through it, like just hanging out. Should also be. I am glancing at the comments. If anyone wants to ask me something or say something or ask Ruth something, then do at Katie Montgomery, because then YouTube like highlights it and I can see it much better. But anyway, so these guidelines are here to help you fill in the consultation, published by the NHS of England, which closes on December the 4th. We've just discussed that. They've got an explainer blog as well. Perhaps I should put that in the description.
Yeah, that's got some important stuff like what is a service specification, which I think is quite good for like. Should we go over that briefly?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do it. Let me put it in the description so everyone can get home.
It's really boring stuff, but it's kind of relevant. So the service specification is like, it's literally the document that says what the service should be doing. And then they use that, like the people who want to run the service have to write a little thing saying we're going to do it in these ways and this is how we'll meet the service specification.
Right.
And then they set the specifics of what they do later on. And this is also like they're calling it an interim service specification. And the idea is because JIDS is abolished, which I still think is a win.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like good riddance to JID. You know that like the meme with like the two hands going like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like TERFs, trans people, abolish JIDs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I strongly feel that. But yeah, like the idea is they're temporarily having this, and then they're going to have like in the long term they'll have lots of new services. So the idea is there'll be, I hate to say this, there's going to be another consultation in theory in a year or two. Because they're going to do the permanent service specification.
No one paying attention to that. Ignore Ruth on that moment. We're just going to get through this one.
Well, the other thing is, like, I think there's two ways of looking at that, right? If we do the big fight now, it'll make it easier down the road.
Yeah.
And if they completely mess this up, people shouldn't lose hope.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are two angles on it.
And that's two good things to bear in mind. So I've just added this to the description. You might need to refresh in order to get them up. Or you can just click on the link that we just looked at, which was in the gender intelligence thing we're just looking at, which was here. Explain the blog, but I put it in the description. So they're saying, what is the consultation about? So we're just talking about the gender criticals have been talking about the CAS review as if it's like the Bible. I don't know if you've seen them saying it. They'll be like, this international law by, Australia's government has gone against the CAS review. And it's like, what do you think the CAS review is? It's not something dictating the law in Australia, you ridiculous clown.
It's not even dictating the law here. Like,
no,
it's going to be like a bunch of advice.
Yeah.
From a cis doctor who doesn't know much about us and refuses to have any trans people on her panel. So,
I just think that should be such, that's a total killer from the outset. If they had a review, if we did the like something review, someone's name review into women's healthcare, and it was done by a man and only men on the panel, you would instantly be like, well, this whole thing's garbage and we can just disregard it. Like that should be off the bat, like should be an obvious thing to say.
Well, you can't have women on the panel, Katie. They'll be hysterical. And more importantly, they'll be biased.
Biased. Exactly. Like trans
only men truly understand women's health.
Just like cis people only truly understand trans people's health. So yeah, the CAS review is a sham and it's complete garbage. But it's one of these situations where you have to decide between taking part in it as much as you can to just try and make a difference and accepting that it's going to be bullshit, or just totally boycotting it because it's going to be rubbish. And I think that one of those things, picking a side on that is case by case, moment by moment. For example, earlier this year, we were going to have this Safe to Be Me conference in the UK, and all the big LGBT groups were like begrudgingly signing up to do it because they knew it was going to be bullshit, but they wanted to make as much difference as they could. And then the government crossed the line and they all pulled out. But we are taking part with this consultation. I think it's useful. Yeah, so they're saying, why now? What the change was proposed. So 2 new clinics will be established is good. Yet another stage before even joining a waiting list is garbage. Yeah, so they've highlighted some of the things that you've said here. When a young person is taken by service, clinicians are now advised to only consider supporting social transition if they experience what is described as clinically significant distress. What does that even mean? You're only allowed to get a different haircut if you are suicidal over it.
Yeah, that's the problem with gender dysphoria as a diagnosis. No one can agree on what it means. Yeah, but it's described as clinically significant distress. So they've tied it to the definition of gender dysphoria.
Yeah, which it kind of feels like you see a kid who's like, oh, I'm a trans kid and I need to transition to be happy. And they're like, sorry, you're not depressed enough. and then you waste their life for 2 years, and they start going through puberty, and then they feel absolute shit, and then they say, I'm really depressed now, and they're like, oh, a mental illness? Oh, well, we can't help you now because we need to cure the depression first. And then they'll drag it out until you're 21, and then you'll go and transition on your own and garbage. Anyway, so I think you summed up what this clinician review is. Yeah, this is a good guide. It's worth having a look through if you're debating. But I think we can probably move on to
let's do the thing.
This stuff. So it's going to this guide will take you through, and me and Ruth will take you through some of the questions and make some suggestions. I think one of the important things from this moment onwards is you can write similar things to what I say and as I'm filling in if you like, but for the Gender Recognition Act reform consultation number 1 for England, 1 of 3, they got like however many 50,000 responses or something, and 20,000 of them were all identical ones from Fair Play for Women. So and that was like the majority of the anti ones. And obviously they can, whoever's reviewing it can just be like, whoop, and just compress them all into one and just completely ignore them. It's just like one response. So we don't want to just send one response. It's good to put it in your own words and give your own experiences, which I know is more effort, but that's why we're doing it together, and we can help each other out with some ideas, and get to the fillings in. So
someone asked whether anxiety counts as clinically significant distress, to which I would say, who knows? No one agrees on what gender dysphoria is. It would have to be clinically significant anxiety. What is that? Ask your clinician.
Yeah, totally subjective. So the key issues that they suggest raising throughout are risk of denying access to the waiting list for children and young people who need assessment and care. Access to the interim service will include an additional consultation stage between phase 1 services and the patient's GP before joining the waiting list, which may cause further delays to access and care. It's just a joke, like as if they need further delays. The delays are already illegal. They break the NHS's own commitment to having 18-week delays for a maximum for healthcare. But like, just, so arbitrary that the waits are so pointless, and this is like, it's different. I know as you're an adult and you apply for healthcare and they make you wait 2 years, that is garbage. But for like adolescent, it is worse because they are going through puberty, and it there's more effect of the healthcare when it's it's more important, it's more time dependent when the intervention happens. Medicalization of social transitions, that's what we've been talking about with this clinically significant rubbish. It also seeks to remove from children and parents the ability to make choices about how they live their day-to-day life. Yeah, exactly. It's just completely rubbish. Implications that accessing private healthcare is a safeguarding issue. Like it feels like an attempt to put pressure on the government to shutting down private healthcare clinics for trans people, which is what they want. They want to make everyone go through one little bottleneck and then make that bottleneck this really high gate that's like there's a combination of metaphors there, and make it like an impossible gate to go through, and then they can just stop all trans people in the country from existing. Like that is the goal of a lot of these people. Not saying everyone in the NHS for sure, but some of them. Restricted access to puberty blockers. Puberty blockers will only be accessible with mandatory enrolment onto long-term research programs. Yeah, so we've discussed that. Contradictions with international best practice. Yes, so exactly the Standards of Care 8, which we were just looking at the letter from WPATH and others. And the lack of evidence. Yeah, previous service specification included a 4-page reference list of relevant research, but this version cited one flawed study. That is such a red flag. I don't know if you've ever done much of this, like following up creationists and men's rights activists and all the the idiots that post things on YouTube. Whenever they have like their references, and they'll give like 5 references, and 5 references will be just Daily Mail articles, which will all point to this. Hello, Greg. We'll all
He's my
point to the
hero.
same one study, and then that one study will be done by some like disgraced anti-vax doctor or something. That is like such a red flag that someone in the process is a dickhead, like is, you know, manipulating this. Someone high up in this process has stopped people from applying the correct research here.
Do you want to know what the one flawed study is for this one?
Oh, is it the Sweden study?
No, it's not
No?
actually. It's this absolutely classic thing where there's several things on desistance. Are you aware of the persistence desistance research? So yeah, for people who aren't familiar, it's this whole idea that some people will desist from being trans if they're supported to explore as young people, and others will persist, which obviously is bad. And a load of people did this research showing that like the majority of young people at gender services desisted. But what they weren't pointing out is a lot of those were like what we said earlier, were like gender non-conforming people who never identified as trans and never expressed a desire to transition. And by desisting, they meant that they didn't physically transition at any point. So those could have been like queer cis men or women. They could have been like trans people who chose not to have medical interventions. They could have been non-binary, because like sometimes they counted non-binary people as desisting.
They could have been trans people who dropped off the NHS pathway because it's a load of garbage and went private. They could have been trans people
although none
who...
of these studies are UK ones either. They're all American.
And
or Canadian.
Trans people
we were talking about that.
Yeah, trans people who wanted to transition and then had abusive parents and so didn't, and then as soon as they got to 18 did, and weren't included in statistics anymore. Yeah, yes. This is this kind of thing, and it's a word game that they've all been playing for ages, but was particularly present in J.K. Rowling's essay where she said, you know, the classic 80% desistance myth, but they're always comparing, they're trying to conflate children before a diagnosis of gender dysphoria or whatever, or the point at which we're talking about trans kids specifically, and you know, so those before and those after, and they just try and say it's all the same thing. And you see this again with the puberty blockers thing, where they're like 99% of kids given puberty blockers go on to be trans, whereas if they're not given puberty blockers, they don't. But really what they're looking at here is the only kids given puberty blockers are trans kids, and the rest of their pool is including kids who are, you know, having gender issues who just need to see a psychologist, or, you know, kids who are wrongly referred, and all of these other kinds of things, who aren't trans kids and who haven't been diagnosed with anything, and who aren't pushing for going on to puberty blockers, and it just lets them manipulate the statistics. But anyway, right, let's finally get this up. So I've just put this link in chat, but I've also got it in the description, so we can scroll down here and we've got online survey. So let's go 1 hour into the stream. I hope this is chill enough for everyone and it's not too boring. I think it's good info.
We've got cats.
We've got cats. Poppy is just down here. Though I think if I might be able to get you up.
Will you get terrifying blue screen stuff? I could have stuck a cloth behind me and looked fancy and professional. Oh, hello.
Here she is.
Oh, hi, Poppy.
Let's get some cat cam very quickly.
This is proper chill.
There she is. Right, back to it, Pops.
Oh my god, Greg literally came along and said, "Meow" at that point. Hey, Greg. Hello.
Greg and Poppy are not fans of each other, apparently. Oh, hello, Greg.
Here he is.
Cats on stream, everyone.
He's just sat here now. Bless him.
Yeah, Poppy, you can just go for cuddle mode. So, question 1 about us. So, I'm going to say, are we responding on behalf of an organisation? No, we're not an organisation.
Montgomery Court.
I am thinking of starting a business for YouTube just for tax things. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it yet. In what capacity are you responding? So, what do they have a guide for this? If you respond on half of your organisation, if you're under 18 would like to respond, this prospective patient. Right, because like they should have someone who's been through this, or like trans person who should also be more weighted. Because I'm not a patient, a parent, a clinician, or a service provider, but my opinion is obviously worth a lot more than any gender critical cis loser who has never even met a trans person. But I think I'm going to put here trans person who was a trans kid who never got help.
Yeah, I think stuff like this can be quite good for putting in this. And like sometimes people might be able to put things like trans person who is socially transitioned, or even like former patient, you know, particularly if you've been through child and adolescent services.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, fill in whatever's true for you. So someone here says, if you fit multiple answers for question 2, what is the best option to go with? Yeah, that's interesting. I imagine that they would give the most weight to clinician.
Yeah, if you're a clinician or a service provider, I would definitely put those down, even if you're also a parent or a patient or another.
Yeah.
That would be my rec.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what they suggest here. It says responses from the first 4 are more likely to be weighted than responses from other members of the public. So that's worth bearing in mind.
To be honest, if you like do any kind of like trans related community work where you do things for other people, like if you're involved in a mutual aid group or whatever, I would put yourself down as a service provider, because you probably are, to be perfectly honest. Like one of the things I did where my letter falls apart towards the end, where I just rage at them, is point out like we're the ones doing crisis mental health support for other trans people.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're involved in any kind of local organisation, put yourself as a service provider.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Because I mean, if gender critical groups can start an organisation with fucking being a Potter who's never even met a trans person before and get, you know, national recognition, then if you're actually doing it, you're actually talking to people and helping them, you're more valid and legit than they are. I'm just going to make a Google Doc, and I'm going to put all my answers in there too for anyone who comes along later and wants to skim read or anything. And also, just in case the webpage times out and we lose all the info. So, question 1, no. Question 2, hopefully this doesn't slow us down too much, but it might give people more time to catch up. I will make this document, I should be able to make it, so let's put, what was this called? Interim Service Specification. Interim Service Specification. Katie Montgomery. So now I should be able to go on share with, or do I want publish to the web? Maybe that's what I want. Make your content visible to anyone by publishing it to the web. You can embed your document. Yeah, link. Content settings. I don't know what this means. Okay, let's just try it. Yeah. I've never done this before. Right, we've got a link here. And I'll put this in the description. And then if you miss a bit, you can go back and look at what my answer was.
While Katie's typing slowly, I'm just gonna lower my camera a little bit. I'm not meant to be. That's not for you to stop typing, Katie.
I'm typing. Right, I've added mine to the description. So cool. Let's do double space in between these. Okay, so we can now move on. Number 3. Your views. To what extent do you disagree with the forced substantive changes to the service specification listed in the supporting documents? Composition of the clinical team. So maybe it's time to look at these supporting documents, because
it is worth bearing in mind that the NHS has got ideas about what they think like we want us to respond to. So part of this is a distraction, right? Part of it is like they want kind of people to waste energy responding to the things they are saying is important.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, GI have some comments on this, which I think is helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, let's look at the gender intelligence comments. So composition of the clinical team. Proposed change to extend the clinical team to include experts in pediatric medicine, autism, neurodisability, and mental health. What you might want to raise: the more support and expertise are welcome, but these experts must receive thorough and appropriate training on how to support trans and gender diverse children and young people prior to beginning clinical work. God, yes, there's stuff that you just shouldn't have to be fucking saying, but you know they're gonna have to. They're just gonna put some crackpot gender critical people who want to wipe trans people out, who've never even met a trans person before, straight in at the deep end, talking to kids who desperately need healthcare. Involvement of more people should not lead to even longer delays to treatment. This may be the result of changes. This may be the result of these changes, as this will decrease the number of clinical hours available to other patients, meaning fewer patients are seen. Okay. Because they'll have to see all of the different people. That the extension of the clinical team should not lead to differential diagnosis that prevent or prohibit treatment for gender incongruence, except where this is clinically indicated. Right, so this is like the thing that the gender criticals are really pushing, this idea of, if someone's autistic, then you can't diagnose them as gender dysphoria. You know, if this person has anxiety or a history of child abuse or something, they're all the things that they list out, and they're just trying to come up with a load of excuses to not help trans people. That the focus on neurodiversity expertise must be about ensuring quality of care for patients with neurodiversity and not negatively impact their access to care. Yeah, so these are good points. I do feel like I want to just look at their supporting documents. Let me get this link back up. So, it's linked at the top of this. Yeah, I should put the actual consultation link into the description too. Let me just do that as well. I thought I had.
It's my Katie typing response.
It's good that I'm quick at typing. Right, I've added this to the description now. I can't believe I didn't do that before. What an idiot. Right. Consultation guide. So which bit is it? I guess it's this bit.
It would be the consultation guide, I think.
Okay.
Which they kind of say what they're doing and why they're doing it. It's really long.
Is it? How many pages?
I spent an afternoon reading this.
Oh, God. So... Yeah, I knew they would have this as their first point.
But yeah, this document is kind of grim in a sense.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find which page you want. It's actually kind of near the bottom, actually.
Okay.
Oh, it's so long-winded. They just want to waste our time.
Yeah, I mean, this was like the thing with the Scottish Gender Recognition Act, where they had like 2 consultations and then like some public debate, and then like then they did an inquiry, and it's just like, fuck off, you're just trying to drain people so that they can't fill it in. Proposed changes. Composition of the clinical team. Right, the current service specification for GIDS describes that service is delivered through a specialist multidisciplinary team with contributions from specialist social workers, family therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, psychotherapists, pediatric and adolescent endocrinologists, and a clinical nurse practitioners. The new interim service specification proposes to extend the clinical team so there's more integrated multidisciplinary team that, in addition to gender dysphoria specialists, will include experts in pediatric medicine, autism. Right, okay, so that, yeah, definitely, the point, like, the first thing I want to say here is all new clinical staff should be specialists in trans health care and dealing with trans and gender diverse youth, or have been trained in this. It is not good enough to just have an expert in autism or what was the other things they said here? Neurodisability, etc., who has no experience or expertise working with trans kids. So that's the first point. No, none of that American. They're trying to put Z in neurodisability. Oh,
That doesn't make any sense.
Neutralizability? I don't know. Well, anyway, I spelled it right, so go away. Okay, so that's the first point. Then second here, reason. Hello.
What are you doing, buddy? He's seen everyone in the chat who's a fan of little pastries.
Shout out for Greg's. The reason for this proposal is to respond to evidence that there are higher prevalence of other complex presentations in children and young people who have gender dysphoria that Phase 1 services will also address, working with local services where appropriate.
I mean, the weird thing about all of this is some of it could be really good, right? It's like, because historically...
It's in implementation, isn't it?
Yeah, like the problem with a lot of this stuff has been like trans kids who are autistic, like the trans services don't treat them because they're autistic, and the services that should provide support for like disabled people surviving in like a neurotypical society, like don't help them because they're trans. And in theory, what this could be is like everybody supports people in a holistic way. Wouldn't that be great? And I genuinely think there's people at NHS England who want that to be an outcome of this, but equally it could just be totally used against people in a way that's like massively ableist as well as massively transphobic.
Yeah, so that's what we want to highlight. Question in chat, can you fill this in if you're not in the UK? Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, just go for it. They're not stopping people. Like TERFs from around the world are going to fill it in. I think you might as well.
And you're going to be able to tell because then they're going to spell neurodisability with a Z, and then we'll know they're American.
I would also be honest about it. I think that's Katie was saying earlier. Like, we just be honest. Like, if you say who you are,
our strengths fighting them. They have more money than us. They have more media power than us. We have the science, and we have being honest and coming from a position of integrity. They're our strengths, and so we've got to lean into them and not try and beat them on their strengths, which is propaganda and lying and stuff. Because we can't. You might think you're a good liar or a good propagandist, but you're not going to take on someone who's funded by ADF or something. So, so I want to say something like that here. I want to say, adding support for trans kids with, other intersecting conditions is very good. However, it must not be used as an excuse to deny trans kids healthcare on the flawed premise that autistic kids cannot be trans or that they don't know who they are, for example. What do you think of that?
I think come through for your comrades. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just must be so frustrating for autistic people to be told, oh no, you can't know if you're a man or a woman. You can't know if you have gender dysphoria. You're autistic. Like, just, God, fuck off. Is there anything else that they suggested?
I mean, this is more of a point of they're deliberately not asking about this, but if anyone wants to get radical, you could be like, why do you need a multidisciplinary team? Like, in Canada, increasingly, now that Ken Zucker's not in charge of things, some people just have a family doctor doing this, you know? And a lot of GPs will be supporting young people with mental health issues, and they'll be supporting young people with, like, all kinds of other medical conditions. Why can a family GP help somebody with, like, some fairly simple diagnosis and support occasionally?
Yeah. So I just want to say something like this. A multidisciplinary team being available when necessary. God, can I spell that? Oh, no, I can't. I can spell it, but only when I spell it out in my head. Being available when necessary is a good thing for those in need of it, but it should not be required for every patient to waste time having to talk to all of these specialists. This should be about providing extra support, not about adding in new gatekeeping or excuses to deny trans children healthcare. Right, I think that's a good answer for point 1. Oh, good thing all right, just put this in here.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, the classic, always copy it out in case the Google form just, like, collapses on you.
So we want to say neither agree nor disagree. I don't think that really matters, does it? They'll just draw a graph at the end and ignore it and look at all of these things. Clinical leadership. Okay. The current service specification for GIDS does not describe criteria for the clinical lead for the service. The new interim service specification proposes that the clinical lead for the service will be a medical doctor. The reason for this change is to reflect that the new integrated clinical teams will have a broader range of clinical disciplines, including medical professionals, who will be addressing a broader range of medical conditions in addition to gender dysphoria. An oversight of the service by a medical doctor is appropriate, given the service may provide medical interventions.
I've got some opinions on this. I actually think this is really good.
Okay.
Like, it's a move away from the psych disciplines and the idea. I mean, ironically, while everything else is really pathologizing, this is potentially a move to depathologization, or de-psychopathologization, to be, like, really fancy about it. Like, it's the idea that, like, medical treatment from the medical side of trans people who want it can be, like, I mean, there's some good points made by GI there. But it's the point that it's not about it. You know, it shouldn't have to be like a psychologist or whatever. Psychiatrists are a bit complicated because a lot of them are medical doctors. But yeah, I'm actually not necessarily opposed to that. But I think GI's point about it's got to be someone who's got relevant skills and knowledge.
So gender intelligence say that this doctor must be an expert in the care of trans and gender diverse children, informed by global experts in the area prior to beginning clinical work. I see what you're both saying there. I mean, I think if you're going to have some doctor getting in there, it needs to be one who knows what they're doing, but depathologizing is good. And that the shift should not infer that gender diversity is inherently a medical issue. Oh, so they've said that.
Yeah.
I'm also going to say they shouldn't be a cis person. If it's the person in charge, I'm just going to say it.
Yeah, let's get spicy. Like, this is the thing. We shouldn't just, if we're participating in these conversations, we shouldn't stick in the cis box all the time.
Yeah. The person overseeing trans healthcare for trans kids in the UK should be a trans person. We wouldn't accept accept it if the people in charge of women's...
Oh, often they are, though.
I know, but I'm going to say, when I say we, I mean me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As
healthcare from top to bottom were men. Women must have a say in their healthcare, and so must trans people. So that's my first point. Then I want to say, moving towards depathologizing trans. Do I want to say trans healthcare? Help NHS help for trans kids is good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing about this. Like, one of the things this service could do is, let's say a young person is referred to them and that young person doesn't want to medically transition, but is like having mental health problems because the other kids are bullying them at school. It's like, that service could do that. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That's 3A. And then I'm going to put any expert who is in this role must have expertise working with trans people before starting this role.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one that there are trans people who aren't experts in working with trans people.
Yeah. No cis people learning on the job. Do you think that's too colloquial? No, fuck it, I'm just going to put it. Right.
It's your response, Kate. You can say what you want. And I think that's a good thing for people to take away. It's your response. Say what you want. Like,
so if you think I'm too chatty and you're writing yours, just write the same thing as me, but without being too chatty. And then they'll get a range. If you can write your most middle-class white person, smug, British knobhead response, if you're good at that, do it. If you just want to write fuck off in big letters in every single box.
I would officially... My personal view is I wouldn't recommend people say fuck off because I don't think it would help as much as I would like to say fuck off to the whole fucking lot of them.
Yeah, let's do proper responses, but that's the only thing you can do.
I'm a big fan of like polite but spicy, which I feel that Katie's response was.
Hopefully, yeah.
But it's your response.
Well, so I'm going to put partially disagree. So spicy. Collaboration with replies. Okay. Collaboration with... Oh god, this is a paragraph, isn't it? The current service providers describe tiered approach. First tier involves meetings between the team, local professionals involved in the care of young people. There are numerous references in the current service specification to joint working between local services and GIDS. However, it's struggled to provide this support to local services in a consistent way because they're fucking shit and it's failed at every single step. The new interim service specification proposes to retain this tiered approach. Progression through the pathway and describes a more structured approach for collaboration with local services. Where the outcome of the initial consultation between, if it doesn't meet this, it will be added to the waiting list. So is this the bit where they're just trying to add an extra step?
Mm-hmm.
Proposed interim service. Okay, right. Oh, this is the long one.
Supposedly, the idea of that is so that random tomboys don't get referred.
Right.
But there's a risk that it will be. And in theory, what it's also supposed to be, because I've been in some meetings with these bastards, in theory, this thing is about helping, because sometimes like the service gets a referral from the GP and they're like, this referral doesn't say all the things the referral needs to say, that's bounced them to the back of the waiting list. So in theory, what they're trying to do with this service, although they don't put it in like human language, is like to provide support for the GP. So actually, in theory, young people would actually get referred faster rather than slower. But the concern is, the concern is it might be an extra layer of gatekeeping. So, yeah.
Someone in comments says, I'm 42 and got a autism spectrum disorder diagnosis in February. And now my gender identity clinic is saying they don't know if I can consent to surgery. This BS doesn't just harm kids.
Yeah, it's absolutely grim,
Fucking
isn't it?
joke. My God. Ugh. They would have absolutely no problems with you consenting to conscript in the army, I'm sure. Right, so, well, they've got loads here. Let's just write that first point that you mentioned, because I think that's important. Any interim service should be there to filter out those, or no, to
No, it
select
should be there to
for.
support referrals.
Should be, yeah, okay, yes. Oh, yeah, okay, that's a better way of putting it. Support referrals. I can never spell referrals. It's one of those one of the words that just arbitrarily has a double letter and not like, why isn't it two F's? Referrals. I don't know. It's just stupid. Should be there to support referrals, and not just add an extra step of gatekeeping to slow trans kids down from accessing the care they need. Right, let's see what they've got here. I nearly clicked the cross then. More collaboration. Yeah, so they've proposed changes here. What you might like to raise: better integration with local services who are better trained at supporting a positive changes. Yes. New requirement for pre-referral consultation may cause delays, barriers. Yeah. So I feel like I might just say this here. Local support is good in principle. Which principle am I going for here? Not principal, principle. Local support is good in principle.
Also good in principles.
Okay.
I'm thinking like head teachers.
Yeah.
You were like smiling like that's a stupid joke.
No, I was like, did I do it wrong? I couldn't tell if you're being sarcastic with my spelling or if you're just adding a shit like dad level joke onto this. Local support is good. However, it is a reality that many trans people have unsupportive or even hostile GPs. I'm going to say towards trans people. It's not the best grammar. Towards trans people. No, have towards their care. Any change in this regard must acknowledge this, and ideally should provide a route around transphobic service providers, and should make it so that hostile attitudes towards trans healthcare are not accepted in the NHS. I've had a lot of problems with this. I don't know how many other people have, but I've luckily moved GPs now, but my previous GP, when I went in to get my initial prescription, I might have told you this before, I was like, oh, can I get a repeat on this? You know, I've been on these hormones for like 4 years. And she was just like, no. I was like, well, they run out next week. What do I do? And she's like, well, I'm going to write to the GIC. And I was like, well, it's going to be like 18 weeks. It was 18 weeks last time. She was like, and I had to do a Karen and was like, well, I'm not going to go anywhere until you give me a repeat. And then she went and did some emergency meeting with the head of the GP and come back and was like, oh, okay, I can do it this time. And just gave me 1 month's prescription. Such a dickhead. That's not the only problem I've had, by the way. Okay, and then, so what have they got here?
We've all been there, really, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah, I've said about delays. Serious concerns. Oh, that phrase triggers me now. I can't bring myself to write it. I don't have serious concerns. I'm just going to tell you what my concerns are. I'm not going to phrase them anyway. I just recognize
You're just a snowflake.
I am. Unlikely the interim service will be able to offer direct assessment. This appears to suggest the interim service will only see those children and young people who are currently on the waiting list for GIDs. But Tavistock, there's no specified destination for new referrals. What? That is right. We're gonna have to write a thing there. This local support must be available to new new patients and not just those already on the offensively long waiting lists already.
There's an interesting point that Sick as a Bat made about the idea of these services being provided in parallel. I think the problem is it's not clear.
Right.
Like when I spoke to some of the people putting this together, the idea is that it would be in parallel, and some of them would help. Some of it would be helping with referrals, and some of it would actually be helping people locally. So the whole point is while they're waiting for whatever they're waiting for from the gender clinic, someone might be helping them out with schools or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, the way they phrased it in this consultation and the way they've just dumped all kinds of unexpected stuff on us, no one from the board I was on expected half of this nonsense to come through. So at this point, at the point when they're not being clear, we should make sure they're clear. Yeah. It's a little bit worrying, isn't it?
The goal of local services should be to support trans kids in parallel, helping them while they wait for specialist services, not as just an extra step to hold them back from accessing care. Right, okay.
That's a nice framing.
Yeah. Thanks. And the care pathways have no timelines. I'm definitely going to add that. I'm going to be sarcastic about this. I am personally well aware that the NHS has completely failed to keep to its own guide of 18-week waiting times when it comes to all trans people, but I think that anyone building a new improved service must commit to these times and make that clear. Oh man, I can feel the rage. Oh. Anyway, that's a good answer for that one. So that was 3C. I hope everyone can, if you've got this document open that I'm sharing, I hope you can see it as I update it. I hope that's useful. What we've got here, seeing, I think everyone's typing. Chat's got a little bit quiet. That's good. That's a good side. So I'm going to say partially disagree on this one too. Oh, referral sources. How many questions are there, by the way?
Too many. Although actually, you're about halfway down. Scroll down the rest of it. See if there's a page 2.
We won't look at page 2 yet. We're doing well. We're doing well. We're smashing through all the important ones.
Let's go. We can do it.
Okay, referral sources. By the way, if you need to bail, Ruth, don't worry.
I'm all right at the moment. Okay. I've been on strike all day, so actually it's been pretty chill.
Okay.
I got to go on a little march around Glasgow, which was nice. Hang out with some comrades.
Nice. Glasgow's nice.
Yeah, Glasgow's great. Also met a trans union leader. Trans people lead unions everywhere. They're very cool. They were telling me about how they've been recruiting lots agitating.
You mean recruiting people to the union or recruiting people to the army of transgenderism that we're creating to destroy God?
Well, quite possibly both.
Okay, yeah, good.
Quite possibly both.
I want to see a missed opportunity.
No.
Right, referral sources, substantive change. The current service states referrals must be made by staff. The new interim service proposes that referrals may be made. So that's a good thing, right?
No.
Oh. I thought they were
Because,
saying adding this on.
no, they're saying it can only be made by GPs and NHS professionals.
Oh, that isn't clear to me. Oh, they very sneaky. They should have said that. If they're removing these, that's sneaky wording.
It is sneaky wording, isn't it?
Oh yeah, here we go. The reason for the proposal is to ensure that children and young people already engage with a local health system before a referral is considered by a local health professional into the highly specialised gender dysphoria service. Well, that's only acceptable if they're able to get like medical treatment without seeing the specialists.
I mean, that's what's so funny about it, really, isn't it? It's like, oh, you've got to make sure that like this person has all the clinical support because all these clinical things are going to happen to them. And then what they're actually proposing to do is stop them from socially transitioning. So I'm not really sure if it even internally makes sense. I actually think what's happened with this document is someone wrote part of it with all of this stuff, and then someone else who may or may not have been called Liz Truss came along and just did a massive turd all over it. And that's where all the like social transition stuff came from.
Oh, it's probably one of their Tory crew. Someone in chat says, if you move to England, like from Scotland or another country, does previous medical care there count towards streamlining the process at the NHS? I would say almost certainly not.
It depends though, because if you're already on hormones,
Yeah.
you can be more of a Karen, because you can say I'm already on this. Whereas if you're waiting for a diagnosis, it might reset you to 0.
Yeah. I was talking to someone who was coming to the UK from India for work, and they were like, I've heard the UK is really garbage for this. What do I need to have already done in India before I move over? And we had a look and talked to some other people, and they basically just got a prescription from a doctor in India for HRT to come over to the UK to then get that renewed when they join the NHS. And we worked out that was the best way, because if they just like moved over to the NHS without doing that, then they would just have to wait, indefinitely. So yeah. Right.
Bit grim, innit?
It is pretty grim. So says the proposal would impact fewer than 5% of referrals at current referral patterns. So why are you doing it then?
Because they're worried about that 5% that's being referred to by health and social services, schools, colleges, and further education and voluntary organisations.
Oh, sorry, I'm reading my head. The proposal would impact on fewer than 5% of referrals, in that around 65% are currently by GPs and 30% are made by NHS professionals. This proposal relates only to interim service specification. Okay, so let's see what Gender Intelligence say. Oh, see, they've got the word only because they're not sneaky. This raises concern about what happens if a GP is unsupportive. Yeah, so we have mentioned that, but I might just highlight that again. It is essential that if a patient has an unsupportive or openly hostile GP, that they are able to have a route around this. I think it is unreasonable to just assume that a teenager or even a parent will be okay with, or will be able to shop around for GPs. There must be other routes. It is naive and... Do I spell that right? Oh, let's get the 2 dots. Is it naive? It is naive and frankly ignorant to assume that every GP has the best intentions for trans people at heart.
You've upped the spice factor there,
I
Katie. I
am.
love
I'm
it.
angry about it.
That looks to me like a disagree.
Oh, we'll see. Let's see what else we're gonna put in. So what else did they put? Okay. So they're saying that it could add confusion. I guess so. There's no information about which NHS professionals are included. Oh yeah, God, there's a whole fucking nightmare there, isn't it? Seeing as what is this? Seeing as, can I put you? Acknowledge that only 5% of referrals come from outside the NHS today. This move seems pointless, as it is clearly not a large burden on the service and is likely just from kids who feel that the person they told is the most supportive adult in their life. There you go. That one is pretty spice. Let's do it. Capital D, disagree. Right, I think that's enough for that one. Oh, I was going to copy the wrong thing there. So that was 3D. Oh, 3D, disagree. Let's get a capital D out of here.
3D for disagree.
Yeah. Did you paste then? Oh, in bold.
That's how strongly you feel.
Not that spicy yet. We'll crack out the bold later on. Come on, Google.
That's true. We've not got onto the serious stuff yet.
Oh, is it? Okay, number 4. I'm definitely still feeling pretty ill. Feeling a bit sick.
Look at this. This is a bullshit question.
Okay. To what extent do you agree that the interim service specification provides sufficient clarity about approaches towards social transition? LOL.
It's like they're basically proposing to like have clinical oversight over when we cut our hair or choose to dress differently, and they're like, is there enough clarity?
No, okay, right, we'll shred into that. But first, Natalie Jennings very kindly has donated 10 Canadian dollars and says, is there anything that people worldwide could do to help and show solidarity with trans and queer folk in the UK? I feel so sad thinking of my fellow trans brethren and sisterin and non-binary, and I guess, being shut out of medical care. Yes, thank you very much, Natalie. What you can do is fill this consultation in. If you have the time and energy to just hang out with us. You don't even have to fill in all the questions. If you're just joining in now and this is the only time you have, fill in what you can. In terms of other stuff you can do, I guess you can follow some trans people on Twitter, though Twitter's kind of dying, but in various places, and keep up to date with the news. And there will be campaigns that people can do. I know lots of people are organising things constantly. Something that I always recommend is following Trans Safety Network, maybe just on their website or their emails, because they do a lot of good stuff. Definitely follow Ruth on whatever you can, because she does good stuff too, like strike and recruit. And
That's what we do.
YouTube guest.
I just want to say something briefly, actually, because someone said earlier, like, oh, are all NHS things put out to consultation that are just open to any Joe blogs? I think the interesting thing is a lot of NHS things are open to consultation, but like nobody takes part because the only people who take part are like clinicians working in the field and sometimes like patient groups. And that used to be the case for trans stuff, but ever since like the moral panic, ever since the moral panic properly kicked off in 2017, and like NHS England haven't handled this properly, and the cast review. Yeah, the cast review haven't handled it properly either. At no point have any of them tried to learn and understand what's going on. So at the point where they open this consultation and like every TERF and their dog and their sculpture takes part, like at that point, oh hello.
The
At
beast
that
has
point, like,
returned.
if they've done something that stupid, actually, the more people from whatever part of the world take part in this who've got relevant knowledge or experience, and if you're trans, you do have relevant knowledge and experience, yeah,
Yeah.
we should just do it.
If
Oh,
you're
such a
if you're
sweet one.
like I know she's lovely. If you're like an expert in trans healthcare in Canada, then write in and be like, UK, what the fuck are you doing? I'm Canadian and we're just better than you at everything in this regard, and at ice hockey. So you need to get on it. I think that's acceptable. Oh, sorry, Pop, I am gonna have to stop
Yeah, I
scratching
hear
your
it's all
ankle.
happening in Manitoba at the moment, of all places.
Where's
Like,
that?
it's one of the provinces in the middle,
Oh, okay.
and they have a very small group of under-resourced but extremely enthusiastic people doing trans healthcare.
Oh, amazing. That's cool. Right, so let's read the little bullshit about this. The current GIDS service specification acknowledges that social transition in prepubertal children is a controversial issue. No, it's not. Divergent views are held by health professionals. The current evidence base is insufficient to predict the long-term. Fuck off. The interim cast report has advised that although there are differing views on the benefits versus the harms of early social transition, it's important to acknowledge that it should not be viewed as a neutral act. What are you even talking about? Dr. Cass recommended that social transition be viewed as an active intervention because it may have significant effect on the child or young person in terms of their psychological functioning. Oh,
Can you imagine what will happen if a girl is allowed to wear trousers? It'll overheat her brain.
Next, there'll be
appalling.
one in a vote.
Yeah.
In line with this advice, the interim service specification sets out more clearly that the clinical approach in regard to prepubertal. Why do they say prepubertal, not prepubescent? Are they different things?
No, that's pretty much the same thing.
Oh. Children reflect evidence that in most cases.
Citation needed. Wikipedian protester.
Oh God, yeah. That in most cases.
You've just. Sorry, I've spent so much time with this terrible document, but you're just there going.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck are they on about? And that for adolescents, the provision approaches for social transition should only be considered where the approach is necessary for the. Oh, mate. Right, okay. I'm going to have to switch into middle class mode or I'm going to write the word fuck. We'll start with a click on the disagree straight away. Social transition includes some or all of changing clothes, hairstyle, style, what other things could it be? Makeup use, name and pronouns. It is completely, oh no, it is beyond, I'm cracking it out, beyond ridiculous that, I wrote the word ridiculous so much you'd think I'd be able to spell it. My thumbs can probably type it on a phone better than my fingers can. It's beyond ridiculous that the NHS or GIDS, oh no, we can't say it, that the NHS thinks that it can mandate what clothes someone would wear or how they would want to be referred to. So I guess one of the points that they are thinking about here is things like at a school you might have a sex tick box or something on the register and you might want to change that. I guess you could include that in social transition, and
Yeah.
maybe the NHS wants to control that. I mean, what is that what they're saying? Maybe we should.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because in the guidance document they talk about pre-pubertal or pubescent or whatever social transition, but if you look at the actual proposals they've got, it's really vague as to whether they just mean you're like like young children or whether they also mean adolescents. So like there's potential for like attempted gatekeeping of social transition at whatever age. I think like the important thing with like young kids is like who cares?
Yeah,
Let them
exactly.
change their name, let them change how they dress. Like it doesn't, that is exploration, right? And then when it's older kids or teenagers or whatever, it's their own choice. Like,
Yeah. So we should put. Hang on, I'm just going to do evidence. So I don't forget. Kids should be allowed to explore who they are and and how they want to present without being forced to adhere to gender roles, to outdated gender roles. There is no reason why any child should be forced to wear certain clothes. There is no evidence at all to show that letting a child express themselves is more or less likely to result in them being trans when they hit adolescence, which I spelled wrong. I spelled it so badly that Google doesn't even know. Adolescence, still badly. Got it. Okay, so
I've got like a quick point here,
oh yeah, go for it.
which is like, this is the point where if you are like any kind of expert or service provider, this is totally the point to bring it in. Like if you're a clinician, regardless of if you're in the UK or you're in Canada or wherever, this is a good point to say, this is absolutely beyond what my role as a clinician, this is inappropriate.
Yeah.
If you're like a service provider who works for a charity or whatever, this is where you say, this is our role to support young people to explore, not a doctor's role. And if you're trans, this is where it might be a good point to talk about your social transition. Like when I finally get to fill this in at the last minute, I'll be writing about.
You could be doing it now.
Yeah, I'm not doing it now. I'm having a chat with you now.
Okay,
this is.
yeah.
I can't be bothered. I'm so tired of writing about this.
Yeah, I know.
I'll fill in my own response in a fit of rage at the last minute. But like, I'm planning to write about, in my case, I did socially transition as a teenager, right? And I did it while I was waiting for services because GIDS never saw me in time because of waiting lists and stuff. And that was years ago now. But that was my decision. And like, when I looked at this, I was like, how dare you? When I saw like Cass didn't actually say all the things that they claim she said. And I've heard secondhand that she's pissed off about this, but I don't know if that's true. But like when I saw what she'd written about it, I was like, how dare you? This is none of your business what we decide to do with our bodies and our lives. Like, it's none of their business anyway, but particularly when it's non-medical, it's like, we're not even asking for anything from you. This is our choice. Like, it's our choice what name we have. It's our choice why we dress. Like, and so that's where as a trans person, I'll be writing from like rage and honesty about what social transition is. Like,
yeah. I might add to that sentence later, but yeah, that's a good point. So I'm going to say, when I came out, I transitioned months before pursuing medical transition. No, it's longer than that. So I'm gonna say over a year, well over a year before I've got to put this. I began socially transitioning. Well over a year before pursuing medical transition and exploring social transition was important pursuing medical transition or talking to any professionals. Exploring social trend. You can tell that I'm getting angry about this because I'm starting to redraft and change the wording as I go. Exploring social transition was important for me to find out what exactly I wanted out of transition and whether I wanted to transition at all. If I was required to see a professional before even being allowed to experiment with clothes and a new name and pronouns, for example, then that would have put pressure on me to conform to transphobic expectations that many cis people have in order to not jeopardize any possible future healthcare. Right, let's read and see if that actually made any sense or if that was one big sentence. I wrote, if I was required to see a professional before even being allowed to experiment with clothes and a new name, I'm going to put slash pronouns, for example, then that would have put pressure on me to conform to, I'm just going to put no, I will keep no, I won't. Conform to expectations that many cis people have about trans people in order to not jeopardize any possible future healthcare. This seems like no, I'm gonna mention it here. This to me, this seems like just trying to. I'll write it. Just write what I'm thinking. An attempt to have push conversion therapy onto, or attempt to allow the pushing of conversion therapy onto trans kids. As you well know, you know when I'm flipping annoyed when you start saying "as you well know," as you
This
well
is your
know.
Karen moment.
Yeah, conversion therapy is of all LGBT people is often largely focused on controlling things such as expression and presentation. I mean, it's a pretty suitably angry answer.
I think that's a really good answer. I just want to address a couple of things people have said in the comments where people are like, oh, does this, I assume this would just apply to trans kids or whatever. Something that's really interesting about this service specification is the word trans isn't in there once. Neither is the word transgender or transsexual. The relevant phrases they've got are gender dysphoria. So this is like the thing I was saying earlier about, I think this has the potential to like, obviously it's targeting trans kids, but it has the potential to like harm any gender non-conforming kids more generally. Like the implication is that if you don't have what they call clinically significant distress and a relevant diagnosis of gender dysphoria, they're not going to let you socially transition, right? So if there's like some cis gay kid who's got referred to GIDS because some people are homophobic, which is something that has happened historically, and he's like, you know, he's a bit of a aspiring drag queen. He's never going to physically transition. That's not his thing. But he's like, I want to be known as Sarah and wear amazing, like, floral print. Then the doctor might say, well, I don't think you have clinically significant gender dysphoria.
So I'm going to
which
ban
he
it.
probably doesn't because he's a cis gay dude.
Yeah.
And then he gets, like, they try and block him from, like,
Yeah.
you know.
That's why I
Or,
wanted to say here all LGBT, because I think it's another
totally.
important part of the conversion therapy ban. This idea they could ban it just for gay people is just ridiculous, because all the homophobes will just send their gay kids to trans conversion therapy and just say that they're trans when they aren't, in just so they can get conversion therapy. It's all the same. It's exactly the same thing. When you look at trans conversion therapy and gay conversion therapy, it's the same procedures. Because the idea is forcing you into a cishet box, not just stopping you from transitioning. Like, anyone can stop their kid from transitioning just by refusing to let them, go outside or whatever. But in order to, what they really want is to change your brain so you're no longer queer. That's the real goal of this. Sorry, I cut you off. Your other point.
Yeah, nah. I mean, I was just in ranting as well, to be honest. Good. I think the kind of references to Kenneth Zucker earlier were interesting, because, I think the very important thing to mention about Kenneth Zucker, because he is very litigious, is when there was a report published on his service in 2015, when it got closed down, the Trans Health Clinic in Toronto. It said, it cannot be said that he is not practicing conversion therapy. So I think it's worth bearing in mind.
Yeah.
That they didn't say he was practicing conversion therapy. They were merely saying that it cannot be said that he wasn't practicing it. But one of the things that he did do is his clinic did give some kids blockers and hormones. And that was if all of this other stuff didn't work. And I kind of see, like, the worst possible outcome for this NHS service spec is probably going in that direction.
Yeah.
There will still be some kids who access blockers or whatever for it, but there's the worry about what's going to happen to all the other kids who you can have something that provides blockers and does reparative therapy.
Yeah.
That's the risk with this.
Yeah.
So the lucky few might get something after being abused for a few years.
Yeah, like if you manage to survive that. Yeah, exactly. Oh, God, horrible stuff. This is why we're doing this together, and this is why it's going to get to hopefully the catharsis of seeing me write an angry Karen answer will give you some points, and you can get out too. And we'll end on.
It's helping me.
Yeah, good.
I feel less alone.
Good. That's
Thanks,
the point.
Katie's followers. Also, Katie.
Well, I think mainly thanks Poppy and Greg, but that's why most people are here.
Greg's cleaning himself in the background. If anyone could see a tiny little ear moving above, my flag draped over all the piles of boxes.
Yeah, some people in chat are saying, glad I'm not the only one annoyed by it. I think you're taking it better than I did. Yeah, it's not just annoying. Man, they can fuck off. Right, okay, next. To what extent do you agree with the approach to the management of patients accessing prescriptions from unregulated sources? Unregulated.
This means any private care.
Yeah, does it say that in here? Do they have the word private? They do. Unregulated drugs.
So they're talking about any puberty blocking drugs or hormone drugs prescribed or accessed outside the service.
But that's false, because they're not unregulated. Like, testosterone is heavily regulated. So it's just false. I'm gonna say that.
Your face is heavily regulated. Sadly.
Pretty much. I mean, in one sense, in more than one sense, it's heavily regulated, and literally every time I post a selfie, a bunch of gender criticals come up and zoom in on my eyebrows and say they're wonky, therefore I'm a man. Every single fucking time some kind of loser does that. Yeah. So they're saying GRDS does not offer shared care with private clinicians. Garbage. In the cases where puberty blocking drugs, the first vibe I get off of this is Labour will not offer a coalition with the Green Party. It's fuck off. It would make everyone's life better if you did. Just get on with it. And the GRDS will not make the young person and their family aware of the risks. Wait, what? Oh, will make the young person aware of the risks. Oh, I messed up this word the other day when I encountered it.
Contraindications.
Yeah, I read it as contraindictions. Contraindications. Any irreversible or partially reversible effects. Right, I'm gonna start off here by saying, describing. Oh, Greg's leaning in. He's gonna jump on your head again. Describing.
Yeah, I was just like swearing at the screen, and he just started sneaking up on me.
HT
He's a good
and
boy.
blockers as unregulated drugs is false. These medicines
What are you doing, buddy?
are very regulated in the UK. Describing them like this gives the impression that they are either black market or complete. Actually, black market is illegal, isn't it?
There's a thing called grey market,
Yeah.
and like some of the stuff, like some of the internet pharmacies you can buy off are kind of in that realm, where there's some stuff that it's illegal to prescribe but not illegal to buy. So then if the pharmacy isn't based in the UK, people can legally buy it here. So it does start getting complicated. But my worry looking at this is the way they frame it. Well, firstly, I worry that they're going to crack down on that rather than give people support to move on to NHS prescriptions. But the other thing I worry about is there are people accessing stuff like gender care, for example, which is a private healthcare service provided by some people who also work in NHS gender clinics. And like if someone were to go there, although I think they've stopped providing a lot of healthcare to young people as well, which is kind of shit. You're going to destroy my fag.
You said you would.
Gregory. And now it's going to reveal the bed.
Oh.
That's what's behind me all along.
Well, does he work for the British government or something? That was the most
Yeah,
anti-LGBT
he's revealing what I really am. Someone in the middle of a move.
He's tearing LGBT flags down. It's like Helen Joyce. You can stamp on them now.
I've only got the non-binary flag in the background, which my partner put up, but I am not personally non-binary, so it's a solidarity flag.
Okay, that's good. Well, Greg, you can tear that down next. What was the point we were just saying about? I had a thing to write about it. Oh yeah, right. So private, the goal of the NHS should be making it so private healthcare is not needed at all by anyone. If private healthcare options exist, it is a sign that the NHS is already failing. In the case of trans healthcare, the NHS has been failing it's been failing so badly for so long for so many people that private options are absolutely essential. This, of course, excludes those unable to afford them, which is discriminatory. But pressuring or closing down these services will not help anyone and will just force people to buy from the black market or move abroad. There is no reason at all that private services would provide lesser or inadequate care. In fact, what we have seen historically is that private options provide care much closer to that of the international guidelines than the disgraceful level of healthcare the NHS has provided trans people. And I'm going to add a personal note. I personally have had to rely on private healthcare for my own transition for almost every step of the way, because the NHS has totally failed trans adults like me, and for trans kids it is currently even worse. Oh man, I'm definitely in rant mode now, aren't I?
Yeah, I think these are the important points to actually just really get those feelings out, to be honest. Someone in the chat, we pointed out earlier, like that thing where this is directly relevant to Wales as well as England, because that's where the Welsh kids go at the moment.
This is why we need...
might change.
This is why we need Wexit. If Scotland can go independent, Ireland can become one, and Wales can start their own country hopefully with Bristol and Cornwall involved too, then
as someone from the West Country, I gotta say, like, we absolutely got to team up on this one.
I would vote for Bristol to join an independent Scotland, or maybe even France. I mean,
it totally Bristol needs to join an independent Wales. I think that's where it's at.
Well, we can make a Celtic Union.
I mean, also, regardless of how this turns out, this is totally the moment for people in Scotland to lobby for a Welsh trans youth service, because there's a Welsh gender service which is way better than most of the English stuff now and the Scottish stuff. So, like, Scottish trans youth service now? Not Scottish, Welsh. The Scottish one is better than the English one.
So we're done with question 4. We didn't even look at all their ones. They've stuck in a load of...
if you want citations, the GI stuff is a good one to go to. And I think it's actually good that, Katie, you put in your own response, because that point that you made earlier about every response being different is really good.
Yeah.
So if people want support on how to rage with that, the gendered intelligence guidance, there's loads of advice. But you don't have to.
People do like doing their sciencey replies. I kind of feel like, and I know this is kind of naive, but I feel like if like WPATH responds to this and they were like, here's a trillion studies, then really, if I just put some studies in there, it shouldn't really matter, because they've already got the experts doing the studies part and my input. Although I could provide the studies, I could, go through all these ones and all these links. What my valuable point is as a trans person. So,
I think you're right. I think it's how you bring it. Like, when I respond to this, that's another reason I'm not filling it on today. I'm on strike. But when I respond to this, I'll respond as an academic, right? So I'll go in and be like, citation, citation, citation. And if you're watching this, and I know there's a few clinicians and academics, totally go academic if you've got the energy. But don't do it today if you're in the UK. But don't be a scab. But if you're an ordinary trans person, your view as an ordinary trans person matters, so you absolutely don't have to do all this evidence stuff. Like, your experience is what's relevant here. Like, the fact that you're an expert because you've lived it, that matters for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. Someone in the chat says, the NHS is failing and we need to provide private alternatives. Quote, I had no idea Katie was such a Tory. So I think that we need to just put in a point here. if the NHS wants to create a system without private healthcare options, then they should just meet the international guidelines for trans healthcare in a timely fashion, and then they will be outcompeted. Actually, that's very right wing, isn't it? Maybe that's what they want to see.
They should just meet the international in a timely fashion, like full stop.
Yeah, okay,
like that's what you need to say. I think that's the kind of, it's the weird irony of the whole thing. Like, I find myself depending people like Gender GP, who I think have treated a lot of trans people who access the services and trans people who work for them. I think sometimes they've treated them quite badly, but it's a necessary service, and a lot of it is still better healthcare than what you get on the NHS, and what we should be really advocating for. And interestingly, much as I've just said I disagree with on some stuff, Helen Weberly's arguing this as well. Like, the NHS should be doing it. The NHS should be paying for it. Like, it should be free. And the only reason we're quibbling over private healthcare is because they failed us.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, it's like the classic like bad like swerve argument where they're like, oh well, we don't, we can argue about whether a world with all sex work or not in the utopian future is what we want, but if they just come along and just make the life of sex workers impossible and more dangerous, then all that does is make sex workers' lives more dangerous. It doesn't liberate women in anything. And it's just the same here. Like, if you want to make healthcare better for the trans people, shutting down the private options without improving the public options just makes everyone's lives worse. It doesn't improve anything. Where am I? Are there any other changes? Right, the first thing that I thought of here, sorry, before you cut in, there should be explicit commitment to wipe out conversion therapy, sorry, awful typing, in all forms, full stop. Okay, sorry, you say your point. I just wanted to write that down before I forgot it.
I can't remember if I had an important point.
Oh no, sorry.
I'd say conversion practices rather than conversion therapy. I've seen a few therapists make this point, and they're like, it's called conversion therapy by sometimes the people who do it, but it's not actually therapy. It's just like torture and abuse. I think this is a really good point. Yeah,
I think to add to this, there are a lot. Just trying to think what I really want to add here, actually, rather than just ranting off about. Do you remember there was this? Yeah. Do you remember there was this thing where I think it was a Welsh lady got arrested, and she was posting like abusive stickers or something, and she got arrested because they caught her posting this sticker that said like trans women and men or something, and they took her in for a statement, and her statement was like the full gender critical conspiracy theory with like no breaths at all, like instantly talking about like Karen White and Jessica Yaniv and like everything that's happened.
They've just disappeared from the discourse.
Well, I know. Well, they'll be back because they run out. They've got to keep cycling it. But she just did all this thing, and the police officer's just like, right, okay. I don't want to come across like that. I don't want to be like, because transgender trend, like. I just want to be like that as a point, here, as these are not currently illegal in England and Wales.
But the NHS is a signatory to the Memorandum of Understanding on Conversion.
No,
I would have mentioned the thing about them not currently being illegal. Okay. Like they've already signed up to a thing on it.
Do we have any other points here? What does gender?
I would say this is the point to bring in, because I don't think they have a specific question on it. I think this is a point to bring in the thing about the research mandate. You might want to scroll down to double check, but I don't think they actually ask about the research stuff, which is very sneaky. So this is the point where we actually have to bring that in, like where they're like forcing people to participate in research. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they don't even ask a question about it. They just try and pretend that they haven't snuck that in.
Okay. Yep. Forcing all patients to participate in research in order to get healthcare is unethical. The what I'm worried about just having a one sentence without elaboration is that it's maybe easier to ignore.
Yeah,
So I always want to like add some little expansion. But maybe
totally.
I saw a good TikTok the other day on Twitter because I didn't go on TikTok. Of it was cat activation noises, and it's like cats who are quietly sleeping to themselves, and it was like the camera was just someone's hand, and then you go and touch a cat, and they're like.
Greg totally does that.
Yeah,
He
Poppy
also
does
announces himself like
Yeah.
he'll jump onto something and he'll be like "Brr." The lesser known cat noises.
Yeah, I love it. Is unethical and unethical. Full stop. It prevents people having autonomy over their own lives and may prevent some people accessing care. Many trans people would be more than happy to voluntarily sign up to being part of studies on trans healthcare. There is no need to treat us as if
Fucking insects.
I'm gonna put lab mice.
Yeah. I feel like I think guinea pigs is an interesting one because the whole like anti-trans discourse around this stuff is like young people are being treated like guinea pigs. And I think the great irony is the NHS England proposals are actually doing that. Like, they're actually trying to treat us like some kind of like thing to be experimented on. I mean, I'm not keen on like animal experimentation anyway, but it's just dehumanizing. I feel like this whenever I go to a WPAF conference as well. I feel like an insect like stuck, like pinned to like a board. I think people need to know that the cat's trying to get in a box.
Oh, this is going to be good. We have to watch this. I don't have a full screen guest option. I should make that. Oh. Oh, chicken. Oh. This is what we're all here for. Come on, mate. I believe in you.
I'm losing my mind here.
Yay! Well done, mate. Are you happy? Oh. No! Oh, see, it was worth coming to this stream after all.
That's definitely what it's all about.
Right, back to it. Thanks a lot for the little interlude there, mate. That helped a lot. Version mixing. So they've said this research thing. This version makes no reference to endocrine services of fertility preservation. Yes.
That's a great irony again. It's like all this stuff from the anti-trans people about you're going to make young people infertile. And it's like, where's our access to fertility services?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
This document makes no reference to NHS fertility services for young trans people. These should be included. Oh, wrong one. It doesn't explain access or prescription protocols for hormones.
That's like the hidden bit. Like, so there's all this stuff about blockers, but there's absolutely nothing.
It's
There's
all
nothing
just
to
been
say
like
that
a
hormones can't happen, but my impression is they're trying to stop any prescription of estrogen or testosterone. Which
I'm
is
not
ridiculous.
calling them cross-sex hormones. They can fuck off. HRT is an essential part of trans healthcare. This document fails to mention them, and it is likely that local services will want to prescribe them, and they should be.
Oh, do you want to be fancy?
Yeah.
That local services will want to prescribe them when clinically indicated, which kind of basically, like, if you're being affirmative about it, is like when a young person wants it. But if you put it in that way, it makes you sound more fancy to like the doctors reading this.
Will doctors
But
read this?
that's up to you, huh?
Will doctors read
Well,
this?
I mean administrators, but their administrators usually like big up on doctor speak. I think that's just something for consider. You should totally write what you want, but like, some people might use when clinically indicated as a reason for gatekeeping, so it can go both ways.
That's my when if I saw that, like, I mean, that is kind of my position on trans healthcare for like kids. Like, we need. It's not just like over the counter, but having some kind of ability for the professionals in their lives to be doing it.
I think they should be available over the counter, but I'm one of these radicals that you've heard so much about.
Well, I mean, I think HRT should be available over the counter, definitely.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Why not? There's absolutely no reason why it isn't. Like, I'm going to be this on this for the rest of my life. I don't need a continuous prescription. It's just completely ridiculous.
No, we have to go to our doctor every single month and be like, more please.
Yeah, I know. It's just
Did you know I still require this?
I haven't died. Please.
My body has no way of naturally producing it. Please more.
Yeah. Well, we did produce a little bit, naturally, just not enough.
Yeah, I don't produce very much at this point, for reasons. Clinical reasons. But yeah. You know, your brain produces it as well. Hormones are wild. They're kind of cool, aren't they?
Yeah. Okay, what else have they put here? There's no acknowledgement that I've hammered this home enough.
Yeah, you've said that quite well earlier on.
Oh yeah, this is a good point. There's no longer reference to public, and so it helps that they've read the previous one.
Yeah,
I guess you have. I haven't.
I have, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah, there's no longer reference to public and patient involvement in innovation and service development. Embedding the patient voice into any new service is critical. Yeah, absolutely.
Basically, they want to freeze young people out of having any say on stuff.
Yeah, this service should be constantly evolving to meet the. Can you get out of there? You can. Cats can jump like 10 times their own height. Uh-oh.
He's fine.
I like how it's
a very skilled animal
as well. It's definitely a cat's habitat.
Yeah, absolutely. He's absolutely loving all the boxes.
This service should be constantly evolving to meet new
well done.
Best practices, and should be should have constant involvement from patients and the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and mandatory enrollment. Okay, cool. Right. Oh, did I put my last answer in the doc? No, I didn't. Okay, so 5 we need to do. That's 6. Right, where was 5? Okay. We're getting it. This is the last one on this page. Good stuff, guys. We're smashing through it. So, I mean, we're like 2.5 hours in, but we're doing well. We're doing well.
I think we're doing great.
Yeah. To what extent do you agree that the equality in health...
So this is an entire separate document that they've got, and it's basically an equality impact assessment, and they say a whole load of stuff like, oh, we've got to bear in mind how this might affect the protected characteristic of sex or whatever, and like GI has some reflections on it, but like basically they kind of don't really think about
What's the last question?
Yeah, they don't really think about things like, hey, how is this going to be affected by people with the protected characteristic of gender reassignment, i.e. is this unfairly treating trans people?
Right. Okay. Yeah, let's see what they say. Is the other document long? I'm definitely starting to die.
Yeah, I'm afraid it is a bit, but we could always have a quick skim.
Yeah,
it's worth just looking at the headings. I mean, I think the relevant ones particularly are sex, disability, and
we've got a social transition. So this is like this point is important that when gender criticals say this, they replace this last word with adulthood, and that is a completely different like claim, because what they're trying to do is make this link between any trans kid and any trans adult go away. And really the important part is the fact that trans kids at adolescents almost always, like 99% plus times, end up as trans adults. And that's like the important part, because that's the point at which you will be administering healthcare. And that's the reason why this other part, the previous part, which is prepubescent children to adolescents, which is what they're discussing about here, is just a social transition discussion. The fact that, yeah, I mean, I guess we said this earlier, but the fact that whether prepubescent children do become trans adults or not doesn't matter for social transition, because you should be able to do what you want. And that's how you're going to find out, isn't it? So, I mean, if they grow out of it, then they're going to do it anyway. So,
I tell you what's quite funny. Look at evidence that's being considered. Nerd point.
Sources of evidence are given below alongside the assessment impacts to individuals who may share protected characteristic. Additionally, evidence has been sourced from routine and exceptional reports that have been supplied to NHSE by Tavistock and Portman and Cass Review.
If I had a student write that in an essay, I'd be like, you haven't fucking cited it. You haven't said anything. You're like, I read some books, and the books are about feminism. One of them was by Karl Marx. Those were my sources. And I'd be like, where's your sources? That was bad. Bad student.
So they haven't, because they say link below, didn't they?
Well, go and have a look.
Given alongside the impact assessment. So that's just this bit, is it?
Yeah. I mean, they're just saying like, but like, none of that's actually really evidence. Like, all of that is like, oh, we've got some stuff about how many referrals there were or whatever. None of that's actually like evidence like relating to how people, so this is meant to be about how like legally protected characteristics are affected. And like they haven't referred to like any actual research on this, or things by like trans bodies on gender reassignment, or feminist bodies on like sex, or disability bodies on disability. So like, yeah, their like use of evidence here is very bad.
Okay. All right, let's have a look at what gender intelligence say, and then I will do an answer, and then it looks like the end.
Then we can go home.
Yay! Then we can all go back to our boxes.
Yes. Climb in them, climb out them.
It states that something. No evidence is given to support this. Oh, I've got to read what it is. The interim service specification sets out more clearly that the clinical approach in regard to prepubescent children will reflect evidence that in most cases, and in fact there is evidence to say the opposite. Yeah, okay. So, Let's start it on here. We'll see if we need to move up. The document claims that most prepubescent, spell it right, prepubescent children grow out of gender dysphoria, but does not provide any evidence for this claim. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. You're the one who's going to come along, do a load of sources.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Wrong way. Okay. The impact of those with the protected characteristic of gender reassignment presents an inaccurate interpretation of the Equality Act. Of course it fucking does. Children and young people who are on the waiting list for GRDS may refer to a phase 1 service of future. Do not share the... Oh yeah, that's just wrong, isn't it? You have a gender reassignment even if just for proposing to transition. The document in... I don't want to just write out all the same points that gender intelligence has, but they've been right in the first two. Incorrectly describes the Equality Act 2010 protected characteristic of gender reassignment. Let's just have a look and see what they say. See this one. Oh, they cannot be treated as proposing to undergo the process for the purpose of reassigning the sex by changing. Why not? That doesn't... It just says they
because this makes assumptions on the aims and intentions of those referred. We can't assume that people referred to the service for changing sex might want to change their sex. I mean, it's ignoring the fact that, like, okay, I mean, as I said earlier, like, a lot of people, like, are going to get wrongly referred to this, like, gender non-conforming kids. But it's like, this is just stupid. Like, obviously, a disproportionate number of people accessing, like, the gender service are going to have the protected characteristic of gender reassignment, which is basically anyone who starts... It's basically anyone who starts a social transition counts as this, right?
They want to
and
stop
they're
people
trying
doing
to
that.
stop people from starting. So basically, they're trying to stop people from having the protected characteristic of gender reassignment. It's my reading.
Yeah. They had the little quote there, didn't they?
Yeah.
Proposes to undergo. I've run out of drink. I should have made 2. Proposes to undergo. I really want an alcohol, but I feel like when my eyes are yellow, I probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I think that's very wise. I think you should take care of yourself. Stuff like this makes me feel like I should start drinking alcohol.
Oh, do you not drink?
I don't drink.
Oh, well.
But what if I did?
What if?
What if?
This
Who
would
knows?
be filled in very differently. Anyone who proposes to undergo has this characteristic, and oh man, I'm trying not to just be insulting now. I was going to say in a word game. I might just leave it as that. Full stop. Those. No, that'll do. That'll do. Right. What else we got here? It's possible it is beyond any reasonable doubt that within the cohort of patients referred to GIDS is a subset who don't. Oh yes, that's what we we're just talking about. On disability, they should include an assessment of how the service will avoid discriminating in access to gender healthcare for people who are disabled.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the whole point of an equality impact assessment is it's something that the Equality Act requires before people do this kind of thing. So they're meant to look at how it affects different people. And in their section on disability, they're like, it's going to help people because we're putting in some extra service provision. And they haven't noted how it might harm people by putting in extra layers of gatekeeping for disabled people is basically what it boils down to. So like they've just done this equality impact assessment where they've like thrown a load of like really ableist and transphobic assumptions all over it.
I'm not really adept enough to come out with a good line on this, but how about the equality impact assessment should not result in extra gatekeeping for disabled people or something, or it appears to do that, or
I don't know, because my brain's just going to cheese.
yeah,
at
mine
this
is
point.
too, and I'm also starting to feel pretty sick, so let's finish.
Sorry.
We're near the end. This is so
Yeah,
fucking,
I
this
would
is
basically
classic England. This is.
I know. I would basically like maybe roll all of these into this point. Like the point I would make is that the equality impact assessment doesn't acknowledge how like disabled trans people of color, well, let's just say for now, like disabled trans people and trans people of color like might be like additionally affected by like gatekeeping and stuff, and it doesn't find a way of like getting around that.
Oh, but it doesn't. It's not that it doesn't acknowledge, because it does kind of acknowledge. Doesn't address.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't address like how actually this is going to prevent that.
Yeah. How to prevent the extra, or how to mitigate.
Yeah.
It's a good word, isn't it? The extra hurdles that disabled trans people and trans people of colour will face
Yeah.
in accessing healthcare and support.
I think you're missing the word does not. You say the equality impact assessment.
Oh, yeah.
Also, SOS, but they mention pregnancy and childbirth because that's a protected characteristic, and they're like, oh, this isn't relevant. And it's totally relevant because, like, they've got nothing in there about fertility, so there's nothing to support young trans people. Like, trans people experience teen pregnancy. Yeah. How's that going to affect their access to care? They've not thought about it.
Yep. This document completely fails to acknowledge the fact that some young trans people may be pregnant, or I'm going to point it out. There is no reason why trans people would be less likely than cis people to undergo teen pregnancies. How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right. I think we've got enough stuff in here.
I think you did it. I think you responded to the consultation.
Well done, team. I hope some other people have got through this with us. And some people will do in the coming days. And we'll use my guide as a help. Right, now I'm going to click continue, and it's going to delete all my answers, and we're going to have to go through and copy them, paste them all again, I think. Oh, no. Okay, it didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We even get a... Yeah, let's do it. There's my throwaway email. Don't send things to it, please. Nice one.
You fought the system.
Yeah, and the system's going to win, and then we're going to burn it to the ground.
Yeah,
in
I think
Minecraft,
that's the way forward.
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, we may consider...
You already said the F word on YouTube, so YouTube, please don't give me a whatever problem. Don't
Sorry, Katie.
delete my channel and replace it with a Stevie Crowder advert.
I mean, what you've got to bear in mind is ultimately you've got a homophobic guest. As a
obviously.
lesbian, I'm the most homophobic of all.
I think what's important though is that if you're a right-wing political commentator who brings in a load of money, you can call for a genocide and that's fine. But if you're an LGBT person and you just describe yourself, then that is not fine because
We're not allowed to make jokes about ourselves. Yeah, no, please
jokes.
do beat me on your post editing. Make me behave.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I'll see what I can do. I get the
I'm
the
restraining myself from using the T word now.
Man, I went on a podcast the other day where that were all over that. It was interesting. But anyway, yeah, someone said my response ID is showing. I don't know if that's important or not. Hopefully not. Well, it's
It
too late
would
now.
make you identifiable if someone from the NHS decided to come and watch this video.
Yeah, which it would anyway. That's okay. We're doing this as a team. So hopefully, chat. Is there anything before we go? Because we've been on here for a long time and I think we both just want to go to bed. Do you have any questions for either of us about the consultation or just a question to Ruth? I don't really need any general mayonnaise questions, but about this because I just kind of want to go to bed. You've got a couple of minutes and then we're just going to call it. But yeah, let's switch back to the mode where we don't have that in the background.
Yeah, let's get rid of it.
Space.
Hey! Thanks for having me, by the way. This just all is far less grim when we all do it together, and I really respect you doing a stream on this.
I think this is. I would like to hear from people what they think about this because I did one of these before. There was a GRA consultation, but what I had already filled it in, and I basically just read through my answers. I think this team way of doing it is good. This is so that when I have other like admin problems, like when I was filling in my GRC application, I just like called up my mum and we just went through it together. And basically, you know, like she was just tolerating me whining at the system and going through
Mum's
it.
stream.
Yeah, well, it was really great, and that's kind of what this is. I just find it. Like, I
not
can
your
do
mum,
this.
Kay.
You are now. I find this kind of thing I can do it, but I find it really stressful to just get round to it and just sit down and like you say you want sanity checks and you don't know if you're on the right line. Having this kind of stream, I think, for me would be really useful. So if it's been useful for you lot, then let me know because I'll do other ones. There's going to be other consultations, and the more consultations they are, the more you get burnt out from them. But if every time it's a team event where we get to watch a cat try and navigate their way into a box, maybe we look forward to the next consultation. So, right, we've got a couple of questions. Christine M says, Ruth, thank you for all the effort and great learning experience. Important.
Thank you, Christine.
Vela says something that Natalie said. Delete the reference. I didn't quite understand that. FOJ027 says, regarding WPath, were any trans people involved / consulted on for the SOC8?
Yes.
Wow.
It's quite interesting. I don't know. I can't talk about it in detail, but I did write an entire paper, well, a third of a paper about the history of WPath standards of care, which you can look at on my website if you look at the publications section. But like trans people have progressively been more involved in the standards of care since like the 1990s.
Incredible.
I know. Can you imagine what those people can do these days? No, because like basically we've been infiltrating the organization. Now realistically what's happened is like more trans experts have got involved and there's been a slow culture shift and like cis people in WPATH have made a little bit more space. SOC8 has more trans experts involved than ever before, but I said something earlier on the stream, like SOC8 is like this weird compromise between like people who hate us and trans people, some of whom hate us more or less. Because like not all trans people are great, but I personally know some pretty cool trans people who are involved in co-authoring the standards of care 8, and I think they generally didn't have a great time, but some of them are proud of what they've got in there. And there's things like bits of the adult care chapter are really good.
There is
Things like the
progress.
non-binary chapter is
It is
pretty good.
progress. Yeah.
Yeah, like there wasn't a non-binary chapter before. Stuff like that. So yeah, there was, and there's like 3 chairs. There's like a main chair who's cis and 2 co-chairs, and one of those co-chairs is a trans clinician called Asa Radix, who is a very, very cool person who's not known about widely enough and admired widely enough, but he's just a very cool dude.
Like, I feel like being known about as a trans person is a double-edged sword, where sometimes the shit bit is sharper than the good bit.
Yeah.
So like having community heroes is great, as long as we don't bring a load of hate to them from the right-wing shit machine.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. Yeah. But I mean, Asa has been targeted by a few people because, like,
of course,
he's involved openly in WPATH. So I would say, friendly people watching this, check out Asa Radix's work. It's super, super cool. Also, he once showed me around a queer clinic in New York and then was like, by the way, points out a window, did you know that's Lady Gaga's flat? And I was like, okay, so what you mean is all the doctors are just peering out the window, just going, ooh. It was a whole thing. Trans people do really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I know. There's like one of the cool things, like, I mean, we might not have been friends if we weren't both trans fighting for our rights. So, and I've met you and you're cool. And there's loads of people like this, like talking to people and they're like, you know, like celebrities and stuff, or like people who have like invented things or built stuff, or like, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Or people
or like,
who are in metal bands like us two.
Yeah. I'm not currently in a metal band, sadly, but I'm glad that you're in. Do you have any new music coming out soon, Kate?
Yeah, I do. I've got to record all the guitars for it, and I just haven't done it. And I've been saying all year, and I haven't done it. Blah, blah, blah. Ignore me, but I will get it done. We wrote a whole album at the start of this year, and we've done nothing about it since.
That's really cool. I wish to hear your new album. More stuff like that. Like, I think we need more, like, I talk about it elsewhere, the trans art and culture. Like, we need to be making our own things rather than just constantly being on the defensive around this stuff. And there is, like, you know, like, I'm not into either of their music, but it's kind of cool that 2 trans people are at the top of the UK charts, like, for weeks. And like, was it almost longer than Liz Truss? Yeah.
That'd be so good. Something like that is going to cause so much more damage to the gender critical cause than anything else we do. Like, all these kids are just going to be like, oh, trans people are normal, and like there's going to be impossible for them to.
And they'll have an opinion on our music which is unrelated to us being trans. They'll like it or not like it. Like,
but yeah, it's totally ruined gender critical's grip on ruining our lives. Just a couple more comments, then we'll call it. Vela says, probably wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for this stream. I don't have that many spoons available and I didn't know it was this bad. Well, I'm glad that we got through it together, and I hope that it didn't use up so much of your spoons for this, because it was a team. So I hope that was good. Vela's also made a comment about the reference number. I'll bear that in mind. You can blur things in post. Katie, are you a member of the Society of Women Engineers? I'm not, but I'll look into it. Send me a DM. And I'm just going to go through the super chats. Noble Monster Comics gave $10 and says can't watch live but want to share my support. Tropter Pieds gave £5 and sent a load of cat faces, which is nice. Kaz Self gave £20, which is very kind. Helen Lawson, £10, says they have trans people who have transitioned many years and they still keep them waiting even for a first appointment. It's torture, plain and simple. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of true for me. By the time I got an NHS prescription, I mean, this was, you know, basically where I am now. Well, apart from some surgery. Natalie Jennings for $10 Oh, we discussed that one earlier. And £5 from Sean Isherwood says, keep up the good work. Obviously saving the maths comments for Thursday.
Someone asked about the cat. He's come to say goodbye.
Oh, I don't know where Poppy. Oh, Poppy's down there in the corner. I've got this nice cat bed for her, where she used to sleep, and she doesn't want that now. She's just in the corners.
Well, Greg says goodbye, and thanks to everyone.
Goodbye, Greg.
Supporting one another.
Thanks for everyone in chat. Thanks everyone who did this. Even if just like 2 other people filled this in, this was worthwhile.
Definitely.
If you know anyone else who might be able to fill this in, like family members or friends and stuff, feel free to send them this video. Just send them the important bits of the video. Just send them my document. Just send them the gender intelligence one. Just get, even if you just fill in one question and be like, fuck this, just click submit. It all helps. Makes a difference. And yeah, thank you very much, Ruth, for coming and joining this quite short notice, for changing around your calendar, for not breaking the strike. Support to everyone who's striking. And I hope you destroy British culture or whatever people who do strikes do. That's what I read in the news, something about that.
Yeah, we're gonna just like destroy student experience forever.
Yeah.
We're gonna refuse to regard them as customers. All kinds of terrible things.
Ruin Christmas. I think that's what strikes do.
Yeah, we'll cancel the trains. That's definitely what academic staff are gonna do.
Glad for it. Cancel as many trains as you can. But yeah, cool. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Katie.
That's okay. Let me just switch the thing. Bye.